September 25th, 2023. It's approximately 1 p.m. Before we begin, I'm going to ask if you please rise as we say the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Okay, we always start off with our pets of the week, and I believe Amy DeFelix is on Zoom. Are you there, Amy? Yeah.
Hello, yes, I'm here. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Amy DeFelix. I am one of the adoption and rescue coordinators for the Animal Services Center of the Mesilla Valley. And of course, every week I pick our pets of the week and present them and kind of network them on Facebook and everything, or social media to try and get them adopted. So let me go ahead and share my screen so we can go ahead and get started. I'll also turn my video off for now. And then end up being a lot of slides, like a lot of text. So I'm going to try and kind of go through it really quickly. So we'll start off, of course, with our cat of the week. Her name is Kiki. Her number is 52164. And she says, I came into the ASCMV last year as a barn cat, so don't be afraid of the ear tip. My former family decided to bring me inside and attune me to the indoor life, which I took to quite well. I spent the last few months in a foster home as well, and my foster said that I am really sweet. I am initially shy with strangers, but I love scritches and pets. Just give me some time to adjust to new situations. And then we also have our dog of the week. His name is Mark. His number is 60335. He says, I am an energetic and friendly dog who would love to have a forever home to take me out on nice walks and coming home to relax together. I'm eager to please, so take advantage of that and help me learn some commands and good behaviors. Come by the ASCMV this week to say hi to such a special boy like me. And our adoption events, we will be actually having an adoption event at Hatch, New Mexico, this Saturday, the 30th. I didn't put a date or time. We'll be there this Saturday, the 30th, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We'll be there at Village Hardware. So that's the address of Village Hardware. If you happen to be stopping by Hatch, or if you know people in Hatch looking for a new dog, definitely stop by. We are also having our adoption blitz to kind of take part in this sort of sports kind of theme going on with football season starting and everything. So from now until the end of September, so September 30th, all of our adoptions are discounted. It'll be $50 for animals that are already altered and $75 for animals that aren't yet altered, but of course they will be before they go home. No matter what, you'll be getting a spayed or neutered pet. And now, kind of keeping along with sort of the behavior kind of aspect of animal owning, I'd like to talk about dog bite prevention. So far this year, from January 1st until close of business yesterday, we have received 135 dogs that have been intake for bite quarantines. I have some statistics. 99, so 73% of these quarantine dogs were males, 36 or 27% were females, 90 were unaltered, 27 were already altered, and 18 were unknown at the time of intake. So the ones that are unknown at time of intake, usually when ACL brings in a bite dog, they can't immediately see if the animal is already fixed yet, probably because they're acting too aggressive or too fractious. And so that's why those 18 have been marked as unknown. We can presume that they were probably a little too fractious for someone to be able to get a good look. They were just behaving too aggressively. I think everyone should be educated about bite prevention, not just dog owners. And these kind of next few slides kind of lean more towards not the dog owner itself, but people kind of, if you ever happen to interact with dogs ever in your life, which a lot of people do. Here are some pie charts I'd like to point out, just so you can kind of see the percentages kind of visually. The majority of the dog bite quarantine dogs are males, almost 3/4 of them, and the majority of them were not already fixed. And you could suspect that this could be a lot of bite quarantine dogs coming in unsterilized and being males. You can make some, theory that it could also be related to hormonal aggression. I know unaltered males, they have the testosterone aggression. They get really defensive of their territory. They get really kind of aggressive when they're when it's mating season. If they smell a female in heat, they can act a little bit more aggressively, and this could kind of help you draw some conclusions as to why some of these dogs that are bite quarantines kind of came in. So in general, to reduce the bite risk as a person that ever happens to interact with dogs, this is taken from the ASPCA's article specifically regarding dog bite prevention. Definitely be aware of dog body language. Aggressive dogs, they usually want to make themselves bigger. They have the piloerection, so that's when the fur on the back of their neck and at the base of their tail stand up. They have their ears straight up and forward. They're standing tall and very stiff. They're not really wanting to move around and kind of be loose, kind of loosey-goosey, I guess. Their tail will be pointing straight up, and it might even be wagging. I know a lot of people think like dogs wagging their tails, they're immediately happy. That's not necessarily the case when when the tail is straight up and wagging very quickly, like kind of like a really fast metronome, I guess. That's not a happy dog. That's definitely a dog that's kind of like on the kind of tense and potential might be on the biting kind of territory over there. Of course, baring teeth, growling, barking, lunging, those are all kind of aggressive behaviors that you should avoid if you see a dog exhibiting that behavior. And of course, there's also fearful and anxious dogs, and they want to be smaller in general. They usually cower, they have their tail tucked underneath, they can be repeatedly licking their lips or yawning, a lot of kind of mouth movements. Their ears will be flat into the back, avoiding eye contact. They might even have something called a whale eye, which their eyes get really wide so you can see a lot of the whites of their eye, and they're kind of like side-eyeing you. That's kind of an indicator that they're being a little anxious or fearful. And of course, even if a dog is fearful, they can still bite if they're feeling threatened enough. So if you see a fearful dog, definitely don't try to approach it and kind of comfort it physically. That might make it feel a little too threatened, and then they may bite. You should always ask the owner before petting their dog, and it's okay if they say no. Of course, these owners know their dogs better than strangers. If they think their dog is a little nervous, kind of a little weirded out by strangers, they would know better and they'd say no, don't really pet them. But of course, always have the permission, no matter what. That can also kind of help the dog kind of see you and kind of get a feel of you as a person before like immediately going to approach the dog, and that might freak them out. If you do have permission, let them sniff your closed hand. It's kind of like a gentle fist. Have them sniff kind of like your knuckles instead of sticking your hand straight out, fingers spread apart. Just so in case they do maybe nip, they'll get like your knuckles or the meatier part of your hand instead of your fingers. Avoid reaching over the dog's head to pet them. You can start with like the sides of the shoulders or even the chest. Reaching over the dog's head can sometimes startle them or freak them out or make them feel threatened, and then they might nip. If the dog seems uncomfortable in general, you can go back to kind of the fearful and anxious behaviors. You can casually and slowly remove your hand and offer maybe gentle words of comfort and affirmation, but avoid jerking your hand, removing it abruptly, or moving abruptly in general. Fast movements can startle a dog and they might react poorly. And of course, avoid interacting with barking or growling dogs, especially ones that you don't know, because you don't know how their reactions are going to be if you approach them. Now, we'd like to, something I learned when I went to school at NMSU regarding animal behavior, we were taught kind of be a tree. So if an unknown dog approaches you, maybe not immediately aggressive, not lunging, charging, ready to bite, very aggressive. If just a strange dog is coming up to you, you can stay calm, quiet, and still. You don't run or scream. That might agitate them or just kind of arouse them, and then it might escalate the situation. If you are bitten, if they do like nip at you or bite at you, don't pull away, don't jerk away. That might make the injuries worse. That might also escalate the arousal and make them want to keep doing it because they think it's like a prey instinct possibly. You'll put your eyes down. You can ball your fists up and tuck them under your chin and no sudden movement. So that's kind of like being a tree. I found this infographic online. It's not specifically kind of every detail that I've mentioned, but it's kind of like stop. You'd be very like kind of tall, kind of stand firm. Fold in your branches. This one has their hands down, but to better protect your neck and your face, just in case, we would suggest kind of keeping your hands in a fist and covering your neck with your head tucked in. That'll be more protecting your neck area. And then, of course, watching your roots grow and counting your head. This is mostly catered towards children and dog safety, which is definitely important. Just kind of wait in this position until the dog either loses interest and walks away or help is there to help you. And of course, there's also kind of be a rock. which is the other instance of a dog approaching you. And if you're knocked down by a dog trying to bite you, you can roll into a tight ball, clasp your hands behind your neck with your head and knees tucked in. This will protect, of course, your face, your abdomen, your neck, all of the kind of vital organ areas. If you tuck in like a little ball, like a roly-poly, or in the fetal position, that'll help kind of protect those areas. And if you stop, like if you don't like wiggle around too much, sometimes, usually dogs will kind of lose interest with an object that is more than not more, like immobile mostly. So they will eventually leave and kind of go off and find something else that'll kind of catch their attention or kind of arouse them in a different way. You can also carry deterrents. There are citronella sprays, not like the bug spray. They're kind of they look like maybe even like mace. You can get them at PetSmart. We also have them at the animal shelter to kind of help with dog fights. Dogs don't like the smell. If it kind of gets in their mouth, they don't really like the taste. They become averse to wanting to like interact with you or try to avoid the situation entirely. And here is a little infographic I also saw online about kind of being a rock. You can see this person's kind of clasping the back of their neck, kind of keeping their vital organs protected, while this cartoon dog is acting kind of aggressively towards them. And I know it's kind of hard to think about these in the moment, so it's good to kind of have this, keep it in practice, and just always keep it in your mind. The more you think about it, the more you kind of are aware of it, the easier it'll be to maybe recall this in case you end up in a situation where a strange dog might potentially bite you, and you can kind of navigate that situation a lot more carefully. That is all I have for today, so thank you.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Thank you for sharing those ideas with us. We appreciate it very much. So next, we're going to go to the jobs of the week. And I believe Sarah Rainey from the New Mexico Workforce Solutions or Connections is with us. Sarah?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Just 1 second and I'll share my video. All right, for the jobs of the week, for this September 25th, we have, for the city of Las Cruces, we have a deputy director in the business services. That position starts at $85,000. The position closes on 10/2, so there's just another week of applications. We also have for the city of Las Cruces a victim assistance program coordinator. That position starts at $45,000 and closes on October 2nd. For the White Sands Missile Range, we have the HVAC technician 1, and that position is an hourly paid position for $27.54. Sorry, and that it closes on 12/13. We also have a dialysis patient care technician. Excuse me, y'all. For the U.S. Renal Care Incorporated, that position starts at $26,000. The posting closes on 10/15. For the Dyerson Charities, we have a maintenance worker. That one's $19.27 an hour with a $500 sign-on bonus. There are some stipulations to that, but check out the posting on that. The posting does close on 10/17. And then finally, we have Core and Main LP. They have an inside sales and operations associate. That position starts at $46,000. The posting closes on 10/6. As always, if you're curious about any positions that we have full-time, part-time, remote, lots of positions available in the Doniana area. Come see us down on Alameda Boulevard, or you can call us at 524-6250 or catch us online at EmployeeNM and any one of our social media outlets. Thank you all and have a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. All right, next we're going to have the recognition of the mayor's top teens. So normally we won't have it on the work session, but we had to kind of change the schedule around a little bit. But so I want to present to my colleagues this year's mayor's top teens, and just so that a little bit about the top teens. So I'm going to just talk primarily to Ifo because he's the newest of them all. Well, I don't know. You have a couple new council members as well. But this program we've been doing since 17 years. So the one who started this initially was Mayor Matisse, And then I took over the following year, and we've had it for the last 16 years. And so it's an opportunity to kind of showcase our students who not only do they do well in school, but they've all overcome some huge obstacles in their life, as well as being well-rounded and participating in various activities throughout school and throughout the community. And so this is our way to kind of showcase them and recognize them and congratulate them. And so one of the things that we like to do is give you a little plaque here. So, and then they have some duties that they do around the community. I think the next one's going to be in a week or two, so if you see them along the trail on Travis, cleaning up trash, honk at them if you want, wave at them, throw them a soda or two or some water. But anyway, so we'll get started. So I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn or Ronnie if you want to join me up here, and we're going to ask that they're going to come here, state their name, what school they belong to, what high school, and then we'll give them a plaque, and off they go. And then we're going to probably, I don't know how, we're going to take a picture, and then they're going to go behind the dais and meet you all, okay? All right, so you.
Go ahead, get started, and make sure you're loud so they can hear you. And this is my top teens. There's 25 of them, and they've had their struggles in life, like we said, and hardships, and their own personal medical issues, some of them. And I'll go ahead and get started. This is the first group of 23-24 class. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Haley Aldrich, and I am a senior at Arrowhead Park.
Hello, I am Hunter Campbell, and I am a senior at Arrowhead Park.
Hello, my name is Madeline Danner, and I'm a senior at Oregon Mountain High School.
Hello, I am Andrew Evans, and I'm a senior at Centennial High School.
Hello, my name is Sarah Fong, and I'm a senior at Centennial High School.
Hello, everyone. My name is James Calvan, and I'm a senior at Arrowhead Park Medical Academy.
Hello, I'm Jocelyn Gonzalez, and I am a senior at Arrowhead Park Medical Academy.
Hello, my name is Kaylee Harvey, and I'm a senior at Las Cruces High School.
Hello, my name is Sergio Hernandez, and I'm a senior at Las Cruces High School.
Hello, my name is Kian Kamali, and I'm a senior at Arrowhead Medical Academy.
Hello, my name is Megan Legault, and I'm a senior at Centennial High School.
Hello, my name is Liliana Martinez, and I'm a senior at Las Cruces High School.
Hello, my name is Morgan Martinez, and I'm a senior at Mayfield High School.
Hey y'all, my name is Holly Norsworthy, and I'm a senior at Mayfield High School.
Hello, my name is Kylie Odom, and I'm a senior at Mayfield High School.
Hello, my name is Emily Osborne, and I'm a senior at Oregon Mountain High School.
Hello, my name is Colby Priest, and I'm a senior at Mayfield High School.
Hello, I'm Giselle Ramirez, and I'm a senior at Mayfield High School.
Hi, my name is Taylor Ramirez, and I'm a senior at Mayfield High School.
Hello, my name is Brady Rewalt, and I'm a senior at Centennial High School.
Hello, my name is Dana Silvestre, and I'm a senior at Arrowhead Park Early College High School.
Hello, my name is Jose Cimental. I'm a senior at Centennial High School.
Hi, my name is Noah Snell, and I'm a senior at Mayfield High School.
Hello, my name is Raul Terrazas, and I'm a senior at Mayfield High School.
And thank you, parents, for your attendance. Thank you for all that you do to help guide your children and becoming the future leaders that they will be. So thanks again. Okay, so we have 3 items on the agenda. The first one's going to be the automated traffic enforcement, the speed van. So this is going to be a little bit different discussion than the last time. This was something that we saw that the city of New Orleans is doing, and they're basically these vans that they're clearly marked, okay, and they're used to target areas that residents throughout that city of New Orleans was having trouble with. And so I think council had agreed they wanted to hear more about it. And so with us here today is Lieutenant McBride, Las Cruces Police Department, to share with us some more different information. Lieutenant?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lieutenant Tate McBride with the Las Cruces Police Department. I'm in charge of the traffic section. I appreciate you having me here. I know this has been an issue where since this was presented about a year ago, give or take, not much has changed as far as the basics, but there has been some new information that came out. The good thing about last year is there was a lot of questions that were asked that I can hopefully clear up for you today. One of the ones towards the end was, does the Las Cruces Police Department have an opinion one way or the other as to whether or not this is a direction we should go? So I can tell you that I am in the enviable position of not having to make that decision. I am in the position of informing you so that you can make that decision. So I tried to approach this with the mindset that we're objective. We don't necessarily have a dog in this fight, but I am going to give you pros and cons because there's not necessarily good decisions or bad decisions as far as this technology is concerned. There's just pros and cons and trade-offs. So hopefully I can answer some of those previous questions for you. Okay, so a quick review. What is automated speed enforcement? Automated speed enforcement, also called photo radar or speed cameras, is operated by recording a vehicle's speed using radar or other instrumentation and take a photograph of the vehicle when it exceeds the threshold limit, very similar to what a motor or any other police officer would do with radar. The equipment can be fixed at a position or mobile, and we will expand on that in just a little bit. What is the purpose? To increase traffic enforcement resources to positively impact driving behavior and issue citations to speeders who endanger pedestrians, cyclists, and other drivers. We'll go into a little bit more detail about the citations themselves, and if there's any questions, please let me know at the end. I know there's a lot. You can go pretty deep into the weeds with this topic, so please ask if I don't cover it already. It's designed to identify violators and lessen the need for the police presence on the roadside. How does it work? Mobile or fixed units are equipped with radar or other instrumentation that monitor vehicle speeds as traffic approaches and passes. So if a vehicle is exceeding the enforcement limit, which can be adjusted, you can choose the threshold for what that speed might be. Your tolerances is what they're called. The radar unit signals a camera to take a picture of the violating vehicle as it approaches the mobile or fixed unit and a second image as it goes past. And this is used for verification of certain things after the fact. The images document the vehicle, the license plate, and the speed. The system itself captures high-resolution photographs and video if it detects a violation. Now, it's important to note that it's not recording anything unless that threshold has been triggered for speed. Before a notice of violation is ever issued, a commissioned officer or a third party, and that's kind of up to you if it's an actual officer for a position that you'd like to create, or if you'd like to contract out with a third party for those reviews, just based on how you choose to allocate your resources. But they'll review the video to ensure the violation is valid. If the violation is valid, a citation is issued, and it's going to be by mail to the registered owner of the vehicle that the plate returns to. This is all regulated by state statute 3-18-17. Hopefully a copy was handed out to you, and it's important. It's broken down into municipalities with populations over 200,000 or under. Obviously, we fall in the under category. But it kind of establishes and helps dispel some of the myths about perception that this is a money-making scheme. Where the money goes and how it's spent is entirely dictated, for the most part, by state statute. So even funds that are outside of the cost of the system itself, which we'll break down here in a moment, it's not like you can just spend it on whatever you want or a pet project. It does have to go to a certain place. So additional costs for the personnel to run the program, and then the rest is going to go to a municipal traffic safety program, and that's by law. So different types of cameras, it kind of depends on what you want. Again, you can go down this rabbit hole as deep as you like, but generally speaking, there's mobile fixed speed vans, warning cameras, which some municipalities do use. They don't issue actual citations, it's just a warning through the same process, and enforcement or ticketing cameras. So the mobile is just a heavy box that sits on the ground or in a trailer. It can be moved around, so if there's certain places that come up, because I can tell you in my experience, I was emailing somebody this morning because they knew this presentation was coming up. They were giving recommendations on where they thought they needed to be. So it's nice to have something that you can pick up and move to put it in a neighborhood or a feeder street as opposed to something like a major arterial thoroughfare. The downside to this is they are more subject to vandalism because they are reachable. So there's an example of what it might look like. You have options as far as, would you like this to be hardwired into the city's electrical grid or solar powered? The fixed is mounted to a pole or other structure. It's about 1 foot tall. You again have the option for solar power. It can be removed and mounted elsewhere. It's just a little bit more time and labor intensive than picking up a trailer and hauling it to a different location. And again, these can be subject to vandalism as well if somebody's motivated enough to climb that high. So this gives you an idea of one municipality. It's not a requirement that you have a special kind of pole. You can use pretty much anything that you want that's city property to mount it wherever you like. So speed vans are typically manned. A commissioned officer will sit in the van to deter vandalism. Pulling an officer from the streets or on overtime, so that is one of the considerations with vans. Unmanned vans are parked and left unattended, but I can tell you, I tried to speak to as many municipalities, at least in New Mexico, that have this technology to say, just give me an honest review. I mean, the companies are gonna obviously try to sell their product, but I wanna know, does this work, and what are the things that they may not tell me? One of the things that was said is that if you leave a van unattended, it is gonna be more subject to vandalism. And the vans themselves, because they have to run constantly for power, is they are a little bit more demanding as far as maintenance because they do have to run consistently. So it's one particular type of technology, but again, it has its own pros and cons. Rio Rancho has about 8 vans, but they're moving to 8 fixed devices specifically for this reason due to cost. Warning cameras, they work the same as any other fixed or mobile device, but issue warnings instead of citations. Warnings are sent by mail to the registered owner the same way as a citation. Warnings can be customized, so some people get to put certain messages in there. You can do it in English or Spanish or another language of your choosing. Usually used in tandem with speed signs, and this is generally considered a way to warn people and make them more aware of the fact that they may be speeding as opposed to an immediate intervention. These are less common because the equipment doesn't pay for itself. So the first chunk of money that comes about once a month, depending on how you choose to contract with the company, the first chunk of money comes to pay for the system itself. Well, with warnings, you don't have that. So the cost would be on the city itself. For ticketing cameras, it issues again, these are all civil penalties. None of this is considered criminal. It issues a civil penalty. It's capped at $100, and again, that's by statute. It's one of the first things listed in the statute that you have. And they're by mail to the registered owner of the vehicle. And these can be fixed or mobile. How effective are they? Granted, this is CDC numbers, so we're talking big nationwide federal numbers. A reduction in average speed of between 1% and 15%. And 15% is generally considered something that's statistically relevant as far as a change if you're conducting a study. Reduction of injury crashes between 8% and 49%. reduction of fatal or serious injury crashes between 11 and 44%. From the U.S. Department of Transportation Federal Highway Administration, fixed units can reduce crashes on urban principal arterial roads up to 54% for all crashes and 47% for fatal and injury crashes. Mobile units can reduce crashes on urban principal arterials up to 20% for fatal and injury crashes. So some statistics. The numbers for 2023 are year to date, so you can see we're at 2,688 crash reports as of September 6th when this PowerPoint was originally created. Traffic citations for speeding about 2109. I can tell you that over the years through COVID, you did see a dip in these numbers. The way that law enforcement was asked to interact with the public due to concerns for being in close proximity to people, exposure, changed. Since times have changed somewhat, we are starting to see the numbers creep back up to being on par with where we were at before COVID, and that seems to be a general trend with many things, but in particular, the traffic section. Again, on the national side from the IIHS, 29% of all fatal crashes were speed related. So speed is consideration, and this goes, it applies locally as well. The state of New Mexico, 11% of all crashes and 3% of fatals were speed related, where speed was at least considered as a factor. And in the city of Las Cruces, 3% of fatal crashes were speed related, and that comes from our track system, which also reports to the state, and UNM collects that data and does a lot of different research with it. So the state statute itself, 3-18-17, what the state statute does is grant the city or municipalities the right to define certain types of nuisances. One of those nuisances that you could choose to define, and has been done in the past, for example, would be the red light, red flex. We've done that in the past, and speed is usually kind of in tandem with that as far as the verbiage in the statute and our municipal ordinances are concerned. But again, according to state statute, the citation shall not exceed $100. That's a cap per the statute. Each month, unless you decide to choose a different fiscal type cycle with the contracting company, each month the cost of the system is retained by the city. So of all the money for that month that comes out, the first chunk of change is going to go back to paying for the company and the equipment itself. After that, the net is going, half of that is going to go to the state treasurer. That's also in state statute. The second half is retained by the city for traffic safety programs and the other costs of the program. So what might that mean? So essentially the personnel required to run it. We're looking at potentially an attorney, paralegal, hearing officer, and we'll go into more detail about that here shortly. But there are additional costs and processes associated with this outside of the system itself. This must be audited annually by the state, and they can choose to do so themselves or hire a third party. And we have to have a hearing officer selected by the district court judge over the civil section because, again, these are civil penalties and people still have due process. They have the right to appeal through a hearing should they receive one of these citations. So more detail on that. What would this program require? We're going to update current ordinance and follow legal steps for implementation. And the one you see listed here is the current Safe Traffic Operations Program. This is the one that reflects kind of our history with Red Flex. So a lot of that verbiage that's already there is, it talks a lot more about red lights than speeding so much. The verbiage could relatively easily be changed to be more inclusive of that particular type of crime. So it's already there, it would just need to be tweaked. We would have to appoint a hearing officer or officers, and that kind of depends on how many citations you get and how many appeals you get from those citations. So generally one, it could be more depending on the amount of citations. But again, that's for people to have that due process right to contest the citation. Staff for the program dependent on contracted work with the vendors. So there's a lot of things that the city can choose to do itself, or for a slightly different amount per ticket is usually the way it goes. You can have that contracted out, including the officer for review. I know there's one third party that will, they have basically a retired police officer out of Louisiana who's still NLETS certified, which what that means is he still has access and is certified to use the databases that an officer would. So he can verify those things, and you can farm that job out to him for a little bit more per citation depending on how you choose to pay for it, as opposed to creating a new position for an officer. Fixed camera location selection, I can tell you a lot of people are concerned about where these things go and what they're watching. There's Big Brother is a phrase that comes up quite a bit, and that's understandable. The way it would be implemented here is strictly data focused. So the Las Cruces Police Department for many, many years has conducted traffic studies. We conduct about 6 to 8 per month. They're all saved, they're all on SharePoint, and for no other reason other than we have a high percentage of injury crashes at this particular location. No other reason other than we put a traffic study out here and confirmed what the residents are telling me, that there's a lot of speeders here. For those reasons, things would be implemented at that location and for nothing else. An LCPD officer or third party for citation review. So you can't just run the plate and start sending out tickets. We want to make sure that the data that we're getting is actually correct out of fairness to people. So everything has to be reviewed. The notary and a court monitor, an attorney and legal assistant, and then a physical office for staff and hearings and everything that would be required, computer, phone, furniture, telephones, recording software. So to give you an idea of examples, at the end of the day, this can be set up, and in most cases throughout the country and the state is set up to where it is completely self-funded. So there's really no money up front. Even the ancillary positions that we just mentioned, assuming you structure the system the right way, are actually covered by the cost of citations, and it's still all within state statutes, so there's nothing going on other than covering the cost of the system, and everything else would go towards a municipal traffic safety program like Vision Zero is what Albuquerque has, which is dedicated to reducing fatal crashes. So an example is one mobile camera that's solar powered with a flashing speed sign to warn drivers is approximately $30,000. Again, there's nothing up front. The same device without the speed sign is about $22,000. There's, again, depending on how you structure, possibility for zero upfront cost. So turnkey, full service, $30 per citation. One of the examples that was given to me today from another city in New Mexico is they pay $27 per citation. Plus 5% for the online portals. So because all of this is obviously tech that's automated, you essentially have to pay for a cloud for the storage. This particular company offers a 2-year warranty, does not cover vandalism, so the cost of vandalism would come out of the city's coffers. Typically these things are insured by the city. Each camera can generate 7,500 tickets per month, which according to the salesperson said that's quite a bit. If you've got 7,500 a month, you've got a different issue. Or 15 gigabytes of data without additional cost. Another example would be 2 trailers with signs, 3 pole-mounted cameras with signs was about $139,000 approximately, and that was a recent quote that was given to a different city. So, pros and cons. Pros is public safety and it's 24/7. So even if I put one of my motor guys on a location for an enforcement project, at some point he has to go home, and then it would fall to someone who's working at night, but that's dependent on call volume. This camera is always at that place, and it's always doing its job for as long as you choose to let it. This does allow for law enforcement to attend other calls for service. There's video and photo evidence of violations, so when people contest them, there's usually not much that can be contested. And these are unmanned. The con are, like we talked about the Big Brother concerns, one of the arguments that I've heard to that is that there's cameras everywhere in 2023. There's cameras in this room, I've got one on my vest, everybody's got a camera in their pocket on their phone. Cameras are kind of a ubiquitous part of life nowadays. There's a con that it could be considered a profit-raising mechanism. Now, each state has its own laws, and some states don't adopt their laws the way New Mexico did, and they have more issues with that perception because where the funding goes is not necessarily where it would go in the state of New Mexico. So I feel like New Mexico's done a pretty fair job of trying to anticipate that and get ahead of it. Equipment issues and vandalism, again, those costs are going to be on the city, and delayed enforcement, so that getting pulled over and getting a citation from an actual officer has a pretty immediate effect. Most people remember that and adjust their behavior. This is not that case. So touching the hot stove, there's no immediate burn. You may get it a week or 2 or 4 later. Now, it depends on how you set this up. If you have a permanent or a fixed station, People are going to figure out where that's at and adjust their behavior. The mobile ones can kind of play with that a little bit, and you can move them wherever you like, and it may be a surprise to somebody. So some additional considerations, they work in very specific locations. So I asked a few cops from different agencies and said, just be honest with me, how's this working out for you? And they said, it does work in certain circumstances and in very specific locations. So to give you an example, if you have intersection A and intersection B, and you have a racetrack with speeders in between, and in the middle of that racetrack you have a crosswalk or a place where people commonly go on foot, on bike, whatever the case may be. If you put a camera in that location, it will have a measurable reduction at that particular location. But the analogy that was given to me is people driving down the highway, they see a state police officer off in the distance, they slow down until they pass them, and then they speed back up. So it does have a very localized effect, but it is a measurable localized effect. They do seem to help on major arterial roadways with some reduction, and that's typically where you're going to find these. So neighborhoods that have an HOA, gated communities, things like that, they can buy these privately and keep them in their neighborhoods, and some neighborhoods actually do that. This only cites the registered owner who may not be the driver. So if you're a teenager or you borrow grandma's car and go out and rack up a bunch of citations, it's grandma who's footing the bill. There are ways to mediate that. There's forms that you can do to contest that say, hey, I loaned my car out, this was not me, this is not accurate. So there's a process for that, but initially, they're the ones getting that citation in the mail. What happens if people don't pay? So non-payment only affects their license renewal. None of this is tied to a social security number, so it's not points against your license, it's not going to affect your credit score. But if you get enough of these, it could affect your ability to renew your New Mexico license because, again, they're running the license plate, which has your registered owner information attached to that. I know other municipalities, I believe it's Albuquerque, is going to a boot program. There's other options as far as payment where you can do 4 hours of community service, but then that takes personnel and the ability to track, okay, this guy only has 3 out of the 4, are they actually meeting it? So there's just additional logistics that come with it. There are certain ways that you can rewrite ordinances to make this criminal after a certain number, and I know that's something that has been explored in certain places, but there's nothing definitive that I'm aware of yet. Again, we talked about the boot program option. I was told that due to the inspection of the Public Records Act, this would all be subject to that. And with the sheer volume of citations that generally come in, the people who are responsible for taking care of the IPRA requests are not a fan because there's a lot of IPRA requests. If you think about even 1,500 citations a month, that it depends on who wants to contest and those types of things, but it's all public record. So I've heard that, anecdotally, the IPRA request can be a bit of a bear. Public opinion, I can tell you that I'd say 2 to 3 times a day I talk to someone on the phone or email with them, and I've had a lot of people requesting this type of thing. I had an email this morning from a gentleman who's at the town hall where I kind of gave him a heads up this was coming, and he said, please put some in hospital zones and crossing areas for school zones. I can tell you school zones are one of those things that I talk about a lot with people on a daily basis. It's just a huge concern. One agency did move some of their cameras based on complaints, so it's not universally accepted. I was kind of surprised that more people didn't reach out to say that they didn't like it because I know there's not always consensus about it. But again, anecdotally from the people who've reached out to me, they seem to be a fan. Generally, this is run by a community development division or something similar with a municipality. It's not necessarily the police department. So the image of being associated with the police department, it kind of depends on how you choose to run it. And that's it for what I have for you. Any questions so far?
Thank you for that, Lieutenant McBride. Before I turn to my colleagues for questions, I'm going to just share with them the best that I can remember, and that might help answer some of the questions. So what you were discussing was primarily stationary, and I think what I was thinking, what I was envisioning, and it's not so much now, but a few months back, I would think the majority of the council were getting emails primarily in District 5, it seemed like, and they were just all over. Okay, so the reason why I like the mobile van is because they don't have to be out. They can be parked, and then when, like for example, right now it's probably been quiet. I haven't received. It's been over a month since I've received an email about someone speeding bad. But no sooner if we were to say no, then here they come again. And so if we just have them parked and just pull them up when we need them, that's one thing. The second thing is, believe it or not, we actually had a 9-mile buffer. So on Lowman, it was 35-mile speed limit, right? It didn't go off until you hit 45. So if you were doing 44, you still didn't get a ticket. So if you got a ticket, you were speeding. You were doing 10 miles. And the reason why the city did that is because depending on if you buy a bigger tire or a smaller tire on your vehicle, it could change the miles per hour. So that was why they put a 9. Of course, that was it was probably one of the worst kept secrets, but it was a 9-mile-an-hour buffer. There were signages all over, and there was a rumble strip when you were going over, and you knew that you were coming up on a camera. Now, can we do that on a mobile van? I doubt it. But like I said, I'm envisioning that it would just be placed and pulled out when needed and not there all the time, just on those traffic areas. But I mean, it's council wants to do more, that's fine. But I was just thinking for those few streets that seemed like was getting a lot of attention. The money would go back to public safety. I mean, to the, not public safety, to the road department for some type of public safety as far as repaving a road or whatever it needed to be. As mentioned, this is a civil, it's not criminal, so I would think, and I think EFO was checking with the chief, that we could probably use police service aides and not police officers if we were to do a mobile van, because they're just parked there, and to prevent them from stealing or vandalizing the van. The difference that we had over Albuquerque is that we only paid based on what we collected. Albuquerque paid the whole amount, and they sometimes actually owed more than what was collected. We never had that problem because we only paid based on what we collected. Now, can we find a contractor like that? I don't know. But I'd be a little cautious of having to pay up front, but if we can do it for little or no cost, all right. Our hearing officer was a retired magistrate, U.S. magistrate judge and attorney, John Darden, and we just needed one, and so it was okay. We had about 80% compliance. The 20% that didn't want to comply, the city would send them a little letter saying, this is a city program, which you're subject to possible non-renewal of your city services, and they started paying. Yeah, city services like water, like gas. Well, hey, they owe. No, that's how the ordinance was. So we had, and it actually brought down a lot of speeders. So, all right. Now, who had their light on? Okay, Councilor Coran, Councilor Flotis, Councilor Bencomo.
Thank you. I really appreciate this presentation, and some of the specific concerns that I had in particular sort of related to what the mayor was speaking of, only using data to decide where these are going. That's really important to me. I've come to understand that people complain about certain people's behaviors in disproportional ways that are deeply problematic, and so I appreciate that you all have, objective research studies that can balance that out, because I think folks definitely see different people different ways when they are doing perceived bad acts. I've certainly learned that as a city councilor. So I appreciate you talking about how you would use that information to guide this, and also sort of your pragmatism in terms of the relative effects. It sounds like you would have data related to traffic studies, but to the sort of additional comments that you had, do you feel like you have would it be overly intense to analyze all the data to figure out the places like that you mentioned that where it's particularly effective, like there's an intersection or pedestrian interface in a long stretch? Do you feel like you have enough data to identify those places? Because if we're thinking like 3 or 4, or someone said 3, that sounds like a starting number, but it seems like we would have to be really strategic and think about how to do that. Do you feel like that data exists for you now, and or would it be really labor intensive to make sure that these are stationed in the most optimum places, not for profit making, but for changing behavior in a moment where it could help people?
Councilor, the answer to your question in the short term is yes. I'm relatively new to the traffic section, so a lot of this, I had to do some digging just to find out what's been done throughout history, and that's what you're getting at. Is we would like a long-term, a longitudinal type study to say, this is the way it's been for X number of years, and due to this one intervention, this is the impact that it's had. As far as localized information, yes, we collect data. So the way traffic studies are done is generally it's by somebody's complaint saying, I've got speeders in my neighborhood. That's one way. The rest is we look at data for crashes, and that's tracked since 2018 through TRACS, which is reported to the state. And it's a good reporting system to look back, and you can search for whatever topic, whichever way you would like. Injury crashes, you can do it by severity. Any particular data point that you'd like to look at can be searched. And even before 2018, the traffic section has actually been very good at keeping track of especially crashes, injury crashes, fatals, and that type of thing, and down to a very specific location. So the data exists to accurately report. The other thing is we're not an island unto ourselves. We're going to be working with a lot of the city personnel. Traffic engineering, huge resource for us. And there's a lot of other resources out there that we have access to.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, because we serve on the MPO where we hear actually there's a dissonance and a heavy lag in the data, and so but I know that you all keep up better statistics than actually might exist in the track system, so I'm glad that you're on that, so thank you. Then my last sort of question related to where the information goes, and then hearing the idea that we would cut off city services. I just want to make it clear that that would never be an acceptable path for me. If we were talking about consequences, I'm open to hearing a lot of other things, but not that one. Cutting off city services for people if they don't pay. So that's just to put it out there. If that's even on the table, I would say we should stop this discussion now. But the data that is collected, where is it stored, and who is it shared with, and or is it used for other operations outside of traffic enforcement?
Outside of traffic enforcement, I mean, within the traffic section, the data that's collected is generally used for traffic enforcement. So it's a question of where do we put our officers if we want to work a project? That's the data that we go to. It's kept, all of you should have access to it on SharePoint on the city's website. So I want to say maybe even as far back as 2015 or earlier. It goes back surprisingly far, considering that TRACS is what we use now, and it's a great system. That's all reported to the state. So we do have some older data that essentially we've been looking at the same numbers for a long time. TRACS is going to report to the state, and then again, UNM does a lot of studies, more information than you could ever want to know about traffic. They do a lot of studies on that. MPO, Ms. Pravengi has been a good resource for us. So all of that data is there just in whatever way, shape, or form that you'd like, and it's easily accessible. There's no issues with transparency.
Well, no, I guess I was asking about individual people's data. So for instance, would someone getting a ticket in a certain area be a potential source of evidence in a different domain of police operations, for example?
No. So the way it works is the information, because you're right, you're running a license plate that has people's personal information attached to it. Yes, that's why even if you chose to not use a police officer to review those citations, all of those things are still, they're not going to be accessible to just anybody who would like to see them. Even if you used a third party, that's still someone who is considered, even though he may be retired, he's still a certified law enforcement officer. And that's what NLIFT certification does, is it says that not anyone has access to these databases because they contain such sensitive information, personal information, identifiers and things of that nature. So no, it's all confidential.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Councilor Flores.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Lieutenant McBride. Thank you for your presentation. Well, I was a victim of red light, and I was going to fight it, and I fought it, and I lost. And it was Judge Darden who was officiating. It was here at City Hall on the second floor. This was back in 2012 or 2013. And it doesn't keep me from speeding. I speed. I do, and but I've gotten a lot better. I go 40 and a 35 and 45 and a 40. That's probably safe enough. But I have slowed down, but it wasn't because of that. It was because of a presentation that was made here by concerned residents who are affected by the traffic on Loman and Amador, and that there's statistically there's been more deaths related, car accident related deaths on that street here in the city. So it's information like that too, I think, that jars people. It certainly jarred me. But the part that really bothers me is that that you don't know who's driving the car. So the owner is the one that gets punished for, as you said, maybe the grandchild or sister, brother, whatever, you own the car, and they may not even be aware that there was a ticket that issued. I mean, if you have a relative visiting from another part of the country or the world, how are you going to bring them, so you have to pay the ticket. So anyway, in losing that case, not only did I pay the $100, but it was $25 for late payment, and I think there was another tag-on thing, and it was like, dang, you just pay the darn thing. But that part really bothers me. I mean, you lend your car to someone, a neighbor, a friend in need, a relative, whatever, and then it's your name that goes into that system, and exactly the question that Councilor Corrin has about how much information does Big Brother have on you, type of thing. And it just, that's problematic for me, just really problematic. And then the vandalism, doesn't the vandalism affect the accuracy? And one of the arguments I brought up and lost, of course, was the calibration. How often does an officer go out there to make sure that it's recording the speed correctly? And I'm sure I know how busy you all are and how understaffed the police department is at this time. I mean, how can you, and you're checking your watch, oops, I've got to go. So the accuracy is a concern. If they're being vandalized from time to time, what's the cost involved with that? And I think that we could, frankly, living between Roadrunner Parkway and Loman, I think if we had more officers going up and down the street, we'd be a very rich city, because there's no way, I mean, people just speed. They must be going 60 or 70 sometimes on Roadrunner Parkway. So the accuracy, the calibration, how often are they calibrated? Maintenance, what kind of maintenance? There's vandalism. And then you said there's a possibility of no upfront cost. But we didn't really get any numbers as to what that cost would be initially and then continuing, and what the returns would be. So yeah, I think, yeah, and then it says that it's run by the Community Development Department. The police department has a Community Development Department. There was one slide, it was slide 25. It was slide 25 that the last dot there, generally, the last bullet, generally run by the Community Development Division of your department, or a police department, or the city?
The city, ma'am.
Oh, no, we don't want them to, no. Just kidding, Larry. I'm kidding, really. But I think it just presents a lot of problems, because why would the city be involved with, that aspect of police work? But my biggest problem is the maintenance, the accuracy, the calibration, and then issuing a ticket to the owner. I mean, that right there is a violation of due process, and I think that's why when a police officer issues the speeding ticket, there's more credibility there because you see the person who's driving, you get the information from the person, and it's fair. But a camera that's, I don't know. But thank you very much for your presentation, Lieutenant. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Before I go to Councilor Bencomo, so Councilor Flores, if you were to lend your car out and they got into an accident and it was their fault, wouldn't you as a registered owner also be included if they were going to sue the driver?
Well, if you were my carrier, you probably wouldn't because you're my friend.
But seriously.
Seriously?
Yeah, I would think so.
Well, it would, no, I wouldn't know. I don't do car accidents.
Okay, well, you would be, you know, so.
Okay, so you know that for a fact that but the issue here, Mr. Mayor, is the driver and the speeding. We're not talking about an accident where maybe there was, maybe the owner would be at fault if that person was intoxicated, underage, didn't know how to drive, etc. But I certainly don't think the owner should be held liable. But you're saying that they are?
But that's why, yes, absolutely. That's why it's important for you to know who you lend your car out to, not just to anybody, because it could cause an accident. And who knows, it could save an accident, because if they are consistently telling you, oh, I'm a safe driver, Yvonne, let me your car, and then turns out that they're not.
Okay, but the difference here, Your Honor, or Mr. Mayor, is that when there's an accident, you know who was driving. You know who was driving, but this camera thing or this whatever, you don't know who's driving. It's just the car owner. So you, yeah, there'd be some liability, but it'd be the insurance carrier that would be paying for it anyway. Thank you.
And then also the maintenance. I'm looking at the ones that they would actually provide it to us. I don't know if there's a company out there, if they would let us have it and they would maintain it and until it's paid off. You know, kind of like our previous company. And then the calibration, I believe, is done weekly.
That's not enough. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Bencomo and then Councilor Graham.
Thank you. I thought I was never going to get a turn to speak. Thank you, Lieutenant. I appreciate the presentation. So I have a couple of questions. But first I'll start by saying that in the 4 years I've been here, it's been ingrained in me, the 3 E's, thanks to David Cedillo. Look at he's smiling over there. Education, enforcement, engineering. And so maybe this question might be for you, but it might be for city management or David as well. I am curious around what is the budget, for example, for an education piece of traffic enforcement? Like, what does that look like?
As far as the funds that would be coming in as a result of the program?
No, just what we already have now, right? So like if this is our frame for the city, when a constituent reaches out and says, look, this is happening in my community, the 3 E's, right? Before we get to any big changes in engineering, which is what I believe ultimately changes actual behavior, is the design of a road. We have education and then enforcement and then engineering. I am curious around like how much are we actually putting behind education efforts to help people understand the dangers of speeding. And I sound silly and I laugh about that because it is, but it's also true, right? Like that's obviously our framework, and I am curious about what that looks like right now.
Well, you're right. There's a lot of solutions, or a lot of pieces to tackling a particular problem. There is no one size fits all solution. As far as specific numbers on budget, I don't know off the top of my head, but I can find out for you. I know certain city resources go to our line items in the traffic section just like any other, and that we also have a traffic safety fund. Generally, that's going to be used for the additional equipment specific to traffic safety, so it's not really spent on anything outside of traffic enforcement on the police side. The issue with the funds that come in as a result of this is you can kind of spend them on whatever you want. So assuming you were to go with these cameras, the additional funds that come in after the system has paid for itself and after the state has had its cut, it goes wherever you like. It just has to be earmarked to traffic safety.
Right. Interesting. Okay. And then, David, I have a couple more questions for the lieutenant, but I'm going to have a couple for you as well regarding this piece and then the engineering piece, the design piece. So we already have a couple of these sort of mobile units, right? They're not necessarily recording, but like the Big Eye, and there's a couple on Hoagland, I know there's already. Yes. I'm curious about vandalism on those, if you can talk a little bit about Like, does that happen often?
Well, it's funny you mentioned the one on Hoagland because it was vandalized recently. It was spray painted. We had one of our public service aides go out and was able to just kind of scrub it off. Vandalism does happen. Anything that's accessible to the ground, and even I did hear some horror stories from other agencies where certain ones have been shot. It happened in, I believe, Houston. So vandalism is going to happen. It's just kind of the cost of doing business, especially when people figure out what they are. They can become a target. The vandalism itself, the funding to repair those does have to come from the city because it's kind of an incurred expense, and that's why they're typically insured by the city.
Right, okay. Let me see. And then I think on page 21, I can't remember, you just had a couple of statistics that were talking about like this between 8 and 40, and it just, like I'm trying to gather sort of like, what's the data that shows that these types of measures actually change behavior? And maybe one more before this? It was like the big CDC data that you showed. Oh, I was way off. Yeah, so like between 8 and 49, that's like a huge sort of chunk of data there, right? Do you feel like we have any of this locally already?
Yes. So that's why I tried to couch this statement by saying this is the CDC. We're talking national numbers, which is why you see a range of 1 to 15, 8 to 49. Interesting, but is it statistically relevant to what we're talking about here in the city of Las Cruces? So to answer your question, do we have that localized data? It's very similar to your question. Yes, we do. So, and you can pull that from sources like us, Trax, UNM. A lot of times I had someone ask me today, can you send me the results of the traffic study that you did on Cheyenne? I sent it to them right away. It's on SharePoint. It's nothing that can't be shared. So transparency is there. To answer your question, yes, we do have much more localized numbers. So the issue is, are we going to put these things in appropriate places for the right reasons? And yes, we do have data to support that.
Okay, interesting. And then, I mean, I just have a whole bunch of other questions around like on the 3% that you had. I think that might have been actually page 21. The city of Las Cruces, 3% of fatal crashes were speed related. Does that include pedestrian fatalities?
Yes, this is all fatal crashes.
Okay.
So this is going to be vehicular, ped cyclist, or anybody on a bike, and then pedestrian as well.
Okay. And then, let's see. I can't understand all my scribbles. So this next question is for David. I am wondering, David, if from like an engineering perspective, what you feel like the data is regarding what is the best sort of way to change speeding behavior? Is it enforcement? It's probably a little bit of both, and that's why we have all 3 E's, right? But I am curious if you also know about sort of the budget for the education piece, and then I know there's a budget for the traffic calming piece.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. David Cedillo, Public Works Director for the record. Councilor Bencomo, to answer your question, what we would see as a benefit to addressing speeding is going to follow those 3 E's. It's going to be that educational portion first. That way the public is aware of the rules, regulations. Again, follow that up with enforcement. And then lastly, we take a look at what are those design factors within the right-of-way that help that. And let me clarify for that. We have existing right-of-way and then we have new right-of-way. So existing right-of-way, that we look at how can we modify that space to help minimize encouraging that activity. New development, that's what we're working towards to address from the get-go. Now, as far as the budget for Public Works, you had mentioned both the educational portion of it and our traffic calming. Those are actually one. Both are in one. So the budget that we currently have right now for a fiscal year is $60,000.
Okay, thank you so much, David. Those are all my questions for you.
Thank you.
I feel like I at least have to marinate on this because just off the bat, I think, honestly, I feel like we need something in the short term. I feel that frustrated, right, not with people who call in to complain about speeders, but with speeders in general, right? Like on Hoagland and McClure and Toshiro and Legends West and like all of these places, right, that it's pretty consistent how much I hear from folks around speeding issues, and so I feel just as frustrated as them, and so I do feel like we have to do something in the short term. And what I like that you just said that actually sort of made me think, okay, well, I think perhaps we should look at one of these to move forward with. Which one? Yeah, I'm not quite sure, but what you said was once these, like the original costs are sort of paid off, we can use those funds for anything related to this issue that could go into education or into traffic calming projects. I do feel immediately like the vans, I feel like are maybe the ones that I would support the least, given that you said they'd have to be turned on the entire time, like idling, and they'd have to be staffed with someone. Like that seems like such a huge, something huge to take on that I don't know if I necessarily support. But I do feel like one of these options could be possible, particularly the mobile one, so they could be traveling from location to location. But I think the biggest piece that I'll say, and this is more for EFO and my colleagues, is that to me it's clear that we should be increasing the budget to the traffic calming program so that we can invest in more design and re-engineering type of measures. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Graham?
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you so much, Lieutenant, for the presentation and also for taking the time to reach out to other municipalities that are already doing this. I think that information really resonates with me, just kind of boots on the ground and people who are already working with it. You very deftly and admirably avoided the question that I'm about to ask you at the start of the presentation, so I apologize, because it's what you so desperately don't want somebody to ask, which is like, what do you think? Is this gonna work? Can we jump to pros and cons slide? I'm sorry, I didn't note slide numbers.
There we go.
Okay, and the potential con that I'm not seeing and that my eyes were really opened is how much human power this actually takes. The staffing, I wouldn't have thought Teresa and Christine of the IPRA requests that you're gonna have to field. And I think the thing that gives me the most pause about this job is that I sit up here and I'm like, oh, this is a great idea. And then I happily float away into whatever the next great idea is and somebody else has to execute whatever nightmare I've just put upon them. I don't wanna do that. So you did not list as a con staffing concerns, but can we talk a little bit about this? What kind of burden would this put on our existing staff, just from your perspective as an officer, Chief, if you want to jump in also, but really everyone who would be affected by this, I mean, and then the big question, does it balance out? Are the potential benefits going to be worth that? And again, I'm sorry, because I know this was the question that you were like, don't ask me.
I also like that it's full.
So I'm glad you asked that question because it does give me the opportunity to kind of expand on that a little bit. I did rush through it for the sake of time. However, I'm going to try and find the slide where it talks about the personnel that's required. There was an attorney, legal assistants, a hearing officer. Here we go. Notary court monitor, attorney, legal assistant, physical office for staff, potentially additional administrative assistants, and kind of your choice of an LCPD officer to review citations or a third party. So there's a couple ways you could go with it. If you wanted to implement this now, the recommendation, and this is actually a recommendation that is carried over since this presentation about a year ago, and this is after review from the city's legal department, is that these are all new positions. So the incurred cost on its face, yes, it's going to increase drastically. Now, the caveat to that is generally everybody has a problem with speeding. So whenever they put up speeding cameras, it's kind of like fish in a barrel, like you were talking about. There's no shortage of citations. That being said, remember that the money that's coming through this system, half goes to pay for the system itself, then you have the cost of the system itself, the first half that's left over goes to the state, and everything else comes back to the city. And that's divided between potentially these resources that you see here. So I asked again, I told people, just be frank with me, is this thing truly paying for itself the way people claim that it is? They said yes. It kind of speaks to the counselor's point. There's no shortage of speeders. And whenever there's a fine attached to that and people actually pay it, there's no shortage of funds. So the person who is trying to give me a sales pitch essentially said, you're not ever going to have the problem, or she's not aware of anyone who has had the problem of not being able to fund these positions in their entirety as a result of the program.
Is it what we most need to be devoting law enforcement positions to, though? That's a huge question that maybe it's not even a question, it's more of a comment. I recognize, I 100% acknowledge that speeding is a problem. I'm more honed in, obviously, on the fatality and crash side of things. And when we talk about, David, you and I have had some great conversations lately about behaviors and choices of drivers. Oddball question, but what's the recidivism rate on speeding? If I get a ticket, is it gonna change me in the future? How many people do you ticket consistently for speeding?
To get you exact numbers again, I would have to do the research. But with the system that we have, that is probably an answerable question. I could probably find out for you.
Yeah.
Recidivism rates for speeding, I think it depends on the person. Will it truly change behavior, or is an environmental solution, an intervention, speed humps? I know that's a common one. We implemented some on McClure, then eventually they were removed, as well as signage and things like that. It just kind of depends. We had a lot of people pulling for them. We had a lot of people pulling against it. The tide will go which way it goes. It just kind of depends. As far as, it goes back to the statement that was made about how can we really solve the problem? There is no one solution. It's the 3 E's. He's exactly right. Counselor's right. It's going to take a little bit more than just one solution. It's got to be a cohesive solution that comes at the problem from a lot of different angles. So will it help? Most likely. Again, it's very localized. If you put it in a certain place and you leave it there and everyone knows, they're not likely to speed there. If you move it around, it's going to have less of a deterrent effect long term because it takes them a while to figure it out. So it's a very complex solution that requires a lot of different angles of attack.
Right. All right, well, thank you so much. I'm just going to stew on this for a while. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Beta, and then Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for the presentation. Most of my questions actually were just answered because it had to do with staffing, but I do have a few follow-ups. One, when half of that money goes to the state treasury, what dedicated fund is that then used for?
So if you'll refer to page, I believe it's page 3.
Okay, I see it in section B.
Yes.
Okay.
So what happens to the money that goes to the state? 65% shall be credited to the Court Automation Fund, 20% to the Traffic Safety Education and Enforcement Fund, and 15% to the Judicial Education Fund.
Okay. Is that then money that stays just at that state level, or are we able to access back any of those things for education?
That would be up to the state.
Okay. And then hearing that these are able to kind of, and I'll say, quote, pay for themselves in some ways with the staffing, it does look like, though, we would need to have upfront costs, though, at least for a while, perhaps a year at least, perhaps more.
So the way that works is because I wasn't immediately sold on the concept either. I said there has to be a catch. Nothing's for free. The way it works is you're signing a contract with a company, and there is no upfront cost. Now, on the back end with personnel and things like that, to hire these people on and have them in place prior to the system going into effect, possibly. For the system itself, the actual cameras, that is part of the contractual agreement that you would set up potentially with the company. So an example is, one contract that was sent to me as an example is $27 per citation. That's automatically going to the company. So that's the upfront cost that was talked about. And after that is when you have half goes to the state, half comes back to the city. And part of what comes back to the city is what's then used to address what they call reasonable costs directly related to administering the program. That's the ancillary personnel that you're talking about. To have those people in place ahead of time, I'm sure they'd like to be paid, and the system is not generating anything immediately. Once it's in place and it's up and running, it's working. But again, one example is $27 per citation, if that kind of gives you an idea.
Okay, thank you for that. And then, in my opinion, just like for right now, of course, more information and education on my end is probably required, but looking at the mobile units seems to be perhaps a better option. Just, I don't know, in my opinion, being able to move some things around seem to be, because there's so many locations, you know, and if we have 3, the fixed areas, it seems to me like there's going to be more requests even once we have these on, that people are going to want them in different spaces or places, and if patterns of behavior seem to change, you know, being able to move them. With that sort of in mind, what systems are most in place in the other municipalities that you researched? Is it the mobile systems or was it the fixed systems? Because it kind of seems like the speeding bans are, you know, not as effective as people would like.
So most places are going to use a combination. Again, our data goes back far enough that we could say this particular intersection is a problem and has been for years. So a lot of places feel very confident putting in a fixed location that is hardwired into the city's electrical grid and leaving it there because it has been a problem and will continue to be until an intervention is there. But when you also have the option of mobile, like the mayor was saying, you can park it or you can put it wherever you like based on additional new data or citizen request, and we verify with the traffic study and say, yes, this is a good spot for a mobile system, then you have that option.
Okay, so actually that's great to know that you're not necessarily fixed to one option or the other, but you can merge.
Correct.
Okay. And then with that, did most municipalities need to have a certain number of cameras to be able to recoup costs of personnel? Like I'm assuming if you had one camera, that might not quite do it, but if you had at least 3 to 5, you usually pay for all the extra incidentals.
Again, anecdotally, most places will start with 6 to 8. As there was one package, I think, try to give it as an example. There was 2 trailers, 3 pole-mounted cameras with signs in the upfront. Well, the cost of that was $139,000, and that's the package that they chose to start with as a package.
Okay. And the final question that I have, if we did have the mobile items, when we look at the portion of money that we can keep on our end, can you store money to look at paying for vandalism, like build up a little buffer? Or does it have to come out of like general fund?
So generally everything is on a monthly basis. So the costs that are incurred are paid for on a monthly basis after, let's say for example, the first $27 and then the state's cut. So yes, you can. Again, the spokesperson that I talked to said you're not going to have a shortage of funds. They don't hear those complaints. So whenever the city gets its portion back, and it says in here the municipality's reasonable cost directly related to administering the program, that is incorporated in that.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Lieutenant, for your work on this. I really appreciate it. We've been talking, you're right, about this for some time. I think we need to do something. Did you get the sense that if we started, say, with this particular one or 6 to 8 cameras, that you have a plan in terms of where you would locate them? Or is that for a larger conversation with other departments?
It would be nice to include other departments.
Sure.
Again, we're not an island unto ourselves. We have a lot of data, but we don't have all of it.
Yeah.
And I would be going to people like Mr. Cedillo, I speak to Sue Yuli through email quite a bit. There's a lot of subject matter experts that are far more qualified than I can interpret data, but there's some people who are very much experts in their field. And a comprehensive solution, including everybody, is probably the best way to go.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping that we're going to do. And once we do that, then we know across the city where it's the most applicable, right? Where we should be putting them based on the number. I mean, I think all of us get those kinds of calls with complaints like it's an accident waiting to happen, kids are going to get hit and die, and we've unfortunately have had some fatalities in pretty, seems like hot spots around the city. And so for me, it's more of a comprehensive, it's not just one strategy, it's going to be a number of strategies, and I'm really interested, Ifo's not here, Connie, in making sure that we have that plan, that we know exactly what it's going to cost, not only the 3 E's, but where strategically we're going to place them. And I would say that for me, more education to the public is probably warranted so that people are aware that we're doing this, why we're doing it, with data. And then I would like to know also, I think all of us know of streets that need a redesign, right? And I also would like to know where that might be, including hawk systems, because we've talked a lot about that as well as a way. And if I remember correctly, we had that, was it about a year ago when we had the individual on Zoom that spoke about the number of strategies, and this one being one of them. This is one of the things that's going to really deter speeding fatalities, those kinds of things. So it's more of, for me to say, yes, I'm in support of it. I'm really looking to you all and staff, administration, to give us, a really comprehensive way of looking at this with some costs associated, because I believe, we're the budget people. We should be able to know what that is and then be able to put forth the money. So I want to say yes, with the caveat that I know what the cost is going to look like, and that we give you every single tool so that you can make it work. And I think our citizenry deserves that. There's a lot of outcry around the city about this, and but I don't want it to be a place where Big Brother is looking and we're giving information. And I'm a little concerned about stuff being on SharePoint. I think there needs to be some tightening up on that. I don't think that everybody should have access to that, and that's just my feedback. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just a couple things. If council, we can't really decide here, so what I would propose is if council, the majority wants to move forward, then, and Ifo had to just step out for a minute, and then what happens next is staff will then put together a bid. They'll go out to bid, and then various companies will come in, and then we'll be able to see what the actual costs are and things of this nature, how they'll be able to see exactly, hopefully align with some of you all's concerns. And if at that point we choose not to do it, then we don't do it. But at least this way here we move forward and let them, because right now it's, Lieutenant has done a fantastic job in getting us as much information as possible, but until a company see that we're actually going out for bid, then they'll start releasing real numbers and say, hey, this is okay, this is what we can do it for, and this is what we can do. Right now they're just giving us generalities, but still, it still has to be voted on. And if you want it based on what comes back, and it's still going to probably take a few months before they develop a type of a bid to go out. And but I think staff has enough information as to what you all are looking for. It probably would be something mobile, something that we can just. And you're right, though. Once it starts getting out into the throughout the city, they're going to want them in their neighborhoods, not the major arterials like you like to speed on, Councilor, but in the neighborhoods, they want them slow, and they want to be able. And if we can pull them out, just like we do with Eye in the Sky, I mean, I bet you once we started doing that and people started finding out that we had that, I think we had to buy 4 more, and they're probably still all out. You know, so I think we have 6 or 8, and I think they're all being utilized. So again, I think if we move forward, it's just to move forward for staff to start developing the bid, go out there, see what's out there, bring it back to us, see how much it's gonna cost, how, you know, and there's gonna be different companies are gonna, I hope there's different companies, hopefully it's not just one, as to what they're gonna propose to give us. Yeah? Yes, Counselor.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that's right. It's a little bit difficult to try to figure out what decision to make without, you know, more solid numbers. But I did just want to ask you, Lieutenant, off the top of your head, do you think you could tell us about how many problem intersections you would think, yes, for sure, a stationary camera at that one? 20? 15? 50?
Well, it's like the mayor said, you can go as far as you would like with that problem. There's no shortage of people who contact me on a daily basis and say, I have a speeding problem in my neighborhood. As far as major intersections, again, I think starting with 5 as this example, 6 to 8 would be maybe a nice pilot project to see long-term longitudinal study, is this effective? And is it actually doing what we think it's going to do? I'm sure if you ask for a certain number, I could probably provide you. I have no shortage of people who contact me and say, please look at my neighborhood, please look at a feeder street or a major intersection.
I personally would love to see that sort of estimate of like what you, from your professional data-driven experience, there is an X number of intersections that are pretty problematic. That'd be helpful.
There's no shortage of suggestions. It kind of depends on where you want to set the parameters. So, you know, data's data, and it can be manipulated. So it depends on how severe of a problem are you wanting to look at, or are you saying that 1 mile and over on the speed limit is problematic? Again,
that's a fair point.
9 miles and over is generally the standard, but you can change that for a school zone. It could be 4 or 5 miles and over because it's a school zone, and we want to send the message. This is not, we don't want you speeding, but we definitely don't want you speeding here. So it kind of depends.
That's helpful. Thank you.
I know the number 1 intersection was Telshore and Loman. In fact, I think, I can't remember, but one of the videos caught, I mean, they would occasionally show the accidents to city council, but I think one of them caught some hit and run driver and was able to track it down that way. So, I mean, it has a lot of good to it. So, okay, so move forward. So Ikani and Sonia, we're good? Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, Lieutenant. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you, sir.
So next item is number 2, Connect Las Cruces, GIS and Data Services, and Courtney Granite. I don't think I've had, well, maybe, do you work for the city, Courtney? Or are you? Yes? Well, I've been gone for a little bit. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I've been, okay, whatever. But, yeah, it was, okay. In and out. Look who's talking, Miss MIA. So I'm sorry. I actually do like her. I know it doesn't look like, but.
Good afternoon, everybody, Mayor, members of council, city administration. My name is Courtney Granite, for the record, and I am the GS manager out of community development. I want to thank you for inviting us to share information today about the exciting things that are happening in GIS. Today we're going to be sharing information about some topics. The first thing we'll be talking about is GIS. What is GIS technology? And the next thing we'll be discussing a little bit more about Connect Las Cruces, and what that is. And then really focusing on some ideas for what's next. So I work with a high-performing team of individuals who will briefly demonstrate capabilities, applications, and share collaborative use cases for location intelligence. Here are the topics we're going to go over today. Alan Wright, who is a GIS analyst, will talk about GIS technology. Trent Bianchi, who is also a GIS analyst in community development, will talk about economic connections and service connections. Next, we'll have Heather Glaze talk about a public safety connection, and also talk about some highlights from what Connect Las Cruces is. I'll take the next one and talk about how we want to expand a little bit on this Connect Las Cruces initiative. And then I'm going to introduce a couple of other success stories. So I'll have Carol Bray come up and talk about services, Celicia Villegas talk about economic success stories, Chief Story and Chief Smith about public safety, and then I'll follow up with how we would like to see business intelligence services expanded. This presentation probably will not flow like a typical work session because we're going to navigate through the ArcGIS online GIS system. So we hope this information is helpful, and we ask that you hold questions until the end. So with that, I'm going to go on into GIS, and I'm going to kick us off with a video to get us started here. And while this is playing, I'm going to ask Alan Wright to come up, and he's going to share information.
When you look at the world, what do you see? We see patterns, relationships. When you use location technology, you can see where things happen before they happen. With Esri location technology, you can see what others can't.
Thank you, Courtney, and good afternoon, Mayor, and also City Council members, executive staff. My name is Robert Wright, for the record, and I am in the Community Development Department as a GIS analyst. What we're going to discuss briefly today, because I don't want to bore people with technical mumbo-jumbo, is that GIS technology actually is built upon the existing city's infrastructure that IT manages, and there's a cooperation between IT and GIS to be able to present the information that you'll be seeing today. It is a collaborative effort that gathers resources from across the entire enterprise of many different enterprise systems, not just one or two. It grabs that information, assimilates it, and makes it a geographic component. So with that, there's a spatial element of location. With location, you can start applying other information, leveraging that location to be able to present a better collaborative story of what is being presented to you today. It is very similar to an enterprise Microsoft Office deployment in that everybody has access to it and everybody can use it, whether to view or to collaborate and build. Later in the presentation, Courtney and also Heather Glaze will be talking about the Connect Las Cruces program, which has made big strides in this direction. So with that, you can actually, as I said, have that opportunity to reach out and engage with either the public or members of the departments. Our program, the GIS program, is a decentralized program throughout 4 major departments in the city, and it allows us to then collaborate and work together. It visually, because it is a geographic location, it can visually represent information to lots of people for lots of different purposes. So one of the things that we all utilize is a base map. And the base map is actually a lot of information that is fed to ESRI. It is viewed by the entire world. So if anybody is going to be going into the city of Las Cruces area, they can actually get to this information. And I'm going to just zoom into City Hall. And as I said, it's a way to convey a lot of information about the city of Las Cruces. In this case, we're showing parking lots, trees, buildings, various resources that are available to us. And it it paints a very good picture of the city of Las Cruces. I'm going to go back to, great, where did it go? I did. Apologies. Oh, I do?
Yeah, you got it.
Pardon me.
Technical difficulties.
Apologies. So as I was saying, the base map, which is actually underneath many of the maps that we produce for the public.
Can I have you talking to the mic just a little bit?
Okay.
Thank you.
So the base map, which I was on, actually allows you to overlay information directly on top of that. And so the information is then shared, can be layered to represent what people are very interested in knowing about. Okay, apologies for that. And as I was saying, what you're looking at today is not a PowerPoint presentation. It is actually some of the GIS technology that's currently being available. So we are allowed to actually present this hub page so that it engages with not just you, not just members of the public, but the entire organization could get to this exact website. But it is not really a web page. It is a collaboration of a lot of information from a lot of different sources. And with that, I'm actually going to turn over the presentation to Trent Bianchi, who's going to be talking to you about some of the economic and service connections that are made available.
Good afternoon, Mayor, councilors, city managers. My name is Trent Bianchi. As Alan said, I will be talking to you all about economic connections that we can visually depict through GIS. As we have a lot of folks coming into the city trying to, whether they want to purchase or lease land to bring business to the city, to boost our economy, we have a map that's readily available that folks can look at and see what parcels are available for rent or to buy, what's already taken, things that our land management folks can use at their disposal to show these folks what's available. I won't go too far into detail with that because Alicia is going to talk about that a little more. This map is a prototype. It'll be out soon. It's coming soon to Visit Las Cruces. For Visit Las Cruces, people will be able to type in a location and they'll be able to see what's near them. So I'll just go ahead and put in, let's see, 700. Oops. So 700 North Main Street. If we look at 700 North Main Street, we can see items that most people want to talk about or have been coming by talking about recently would be cannabis, shopping, points of interest, even parks and recreation stuff within half a mile. If half a mile doesn't cut it for them and they want to see further, they can adjust the slider all the way out to 5 miles. 5 miles would be a little excessive for our city, but maybe 1.5 miles would be good for them. Next, this is a mapping-based app. So this will show the business registrations for cannabis in the city, and it's broken out by year. So 2019 we had 1, 2023 we have 28 new licenses. You can also look at it based on district, and down below there's a attribute table. The attribute table will let you know if this is actually a dispensary or is this like a wholesale retailer for cannabis. And now some service-based GIS that we can do for folks. What's coming up soon? An election. So what do folks want to know? They want to find election information about their council district. So again, they can type in an address. So say I lived at 400 West Las Cruces Avenue, and I want to know what's going on. For me, I'll be able to vote for mayor, district councilor, and the municipal judge. In different locations, it'll change based on who's available for the next election. Now, that's great for that part. Now let's find polling stations. So we'll use the same address. And the same address, I look within a mile, and what do you know? City Hall is where I can come and vote. But let's say it's busy there, and you know, I only have so much time for lunch, so I'm going to go to one of the other locations nearby me, and I have now instantly 4 more locations that I can look at. These two apps are currently available on the LasCruces.gov site under elections. So any citizen can grab this, check this out, and find these locations and find out what they can vote for in their district. And now my final map will be a view of what's available per district, just different kinds of sites and shopping, parks, anything that's available per district. To anyone who wants to know, if they're looking in their area and they're like, hey, I want to know, you know, where's the police station? Well, the police station is right here in District 1, and we have a variety of parks, shopping, senior facilities, and government infrastructure. These are different, just quick items that folks can search through, and they can pick and choose what they want to see and filter out what they don't want to see within some of these maps. Thank you all for your time. I will be passing on the presentation to Heather Glaze, who will talk to you about Public Works.
Thank you, Trent. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of Council, and City Administration. My name is Heather Glaze, and I am the GIS Analyst for the Public Works Department. And where are we here? Okay. So right now, I'd like to show you another example of an application we've put together to just sort of further demonstrate the capabilities that we have with GIS. This one was built using ArcGIS Insights, and it is concerned with pavement condition across the city. So pulling this up, we see what is probably a familiar map here in the upper left-hand corner. We are looking at pavement condition across the 6 council districts. The pavement condition is also visualized here on the right in 7 categories, ranging from excellent to very poor. So these columns show the sum total of segments in each category, and when you click on these columns, you actually highlight these particular segments within the map. So these happen to be excellent streets. These are very good, so on and so forth. So you can see there's a lot of interactivity among the elements in these applications. Below, we've included a couple of maps just to show some quick analysis that we can do. On the left, we have sum of roadway length by district. On the right, we have average PCI by district. In the lower right-hand corner, we've included a couple of citywide stats as well. So this is a very quick look at this application, but between this and what Trent was able to just demonstrate for us, I hope that you see that we have a ton of capability available to us with GIS. We created all of these things, but we can do so much more. We really think this is just kind of scratching the surface. So that brings me to my next point, which is Connect Las Cruces. So we feel that the sky is the limit with the technology that we have access to, and that's why we decided to launch the Connect Las Cruces initiative, spearheaded by Courtney, to take these GIS tools and to put them into the hands of staff as widely as possible across the city to modernize our approach to our day-to-day business practices. In short, we want to share the wealth. So to do this, we got started by putting together a people-focused plan of action. The product of this effort is what we called our Adoption Management Playbook. And this was created using the involvement of leadership and staff throughout the city. This is a group of folks we called our Change Network. So using this broad participation did a couple of things for us that were really important. Number one, it got their participation, right? Staff from all over the city had input on this plan, not just a couple of departments that have GIS staff and initiatives underway already. And number two, it got us a lot of buy-in. Along the way in this planning process, people were able to see what was in it for them, right? So people were excited to see this plan get put into place, and that's important to get any initiative off the ground. So with our plan in place, we set about implementing it, and the key part of this centered around training. So we could have opted to just use existing resources that Esri makes available to us, kind of out of the can, generic trainings. They're very good. But instead, we opted to develop our own in-house trainings, created and delivered by our staff to our staff, right? So this allowed for a much more tailored approach in our efforts, and we even made it a point to encourage our participants to bring their own real-life scenarios and data with them when they came to the trainings. It wasn't required, but we did find that when people brought their own spreadsheets, they were able to create GIS data sets and maps and apps that were useful to them right out of the gate. So these folks were seeing the benefits immediately. So you can see this is kind of the timeline that we've followed. We got started with this last March. Putting together the plan took several weeks before it was finalized and adopted in June. We put together our training plan, and we actually started training folks about a year ago. And to date, we've offered about 20 trainings, attended by 89 attendees. A lot of those faces we saw in multiple training sessions, which was very exciting for us to have repeat customers. And we actually also increased our GIS user membership online. We more than doubled it. So that number today stands at about 524, and most of those new folks came from departments that didn't have a whole lot of GIS activity previous to Connect Las Cruces. So we consider Connect Las Cruces to be a big success, and not just because of the numbers that I just touched on with you. We also just see more collaboration among staff. We see data ownership in folks who have learned to create things for themselves. And we see more interest in self-service analytics. And overall, we just see a greater empowerment in staff who have learned to create maps and apps and things on their own. And we aren't the only ones who think so. Connect Las Cruces was even featured in the spring issue of ArcUser magazine. This is kind of an industry standard publication that highlights noteworthy stories in the greater GIS community. So 450,000 subscribers were able to read an interview with our own Courtney Granite, who kind of described our journey with Connect so far. And I can't forget to show the photos of the staff that was included in the article. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Courtney, who's going to talk about what's next for us, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. As Heather mentioned, our user base really has grown, and it continues to expand. So we know they're thinking about data, and they want to use data and what they can do with it. So we are really pushing them to do the best they can and do the best work using GIS. So what we're thinking ahead, we have some goals that we'd like to see come to fruition. We really want to expand the momentum for this grassroots effort and maybe put a bit more focus on enterprise data. You know, we talked a lot about data earlier, more traffic related and crime and things like that. I think we could help the organization out by expanding our business intelligence services. And we really want to gain support from y'all up there, council and city manager's office. So that's how we feel. We feel like the next step is taking it and expanding data across the organization, modernizing it across the organization. So kind of the strategy behind that is really to expand, keep building the workforce, have them learn, explore, leverage, and innovate in the GIS environment. We want to develop agents of change, and they can do that. They can take it as far as they want to go, advance their skill sets. They all have ideas. We should be kind of providing a culture that allows them to do that. I think some key questions that we can have people ask, or we can ask you all, is what can't you do with data and what do you want to do with data? Because that's really, answering those questions is how we can use GIS going forward. We also want to build the transparency within the organization and build the trust in our citizens, have them trust the government that we work for. So we can unlock data for sharing if that's an opportunity to do so in a safe way without compromising personal information and things like that. We would like to see data come together and more data sets come together in this system and allow us to drive more outcomes using enterprise data. So with that, I want to introduce a couple people to share some stories, success stories in our GIS enterprise system. First person I'm going to ask is Carol Bray with Quality of Life. I'd like her to come up and talk to us about how they were successful using data around Meals on Wheels.
Thank you, Courtney. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, City staff, executive team. My name is Carol Bray. I'm Director of the Quality of Life Department, and very happy to talk to you about a little success story we had with our senior programs and mapping of our Meals on Wheels routes. When the Quality of Life Department senior programs received a grant last year to provide medically tailored meals for seniors, that came from the Meals on Wheels America program, our staff started looking for the most efficient way to deliver these meals. These are very important meals because it's a first-time program, and these meals are intended to improve the diet and nutrition of seniors who struggle with some really serious health issues like diabetes, heart concerns, renal failure, and even some who are on liquid diets. So we wanted to be sure we could deliver those meals effectively. Kim Hansen, who used to be our assistant management analyst for senior programs, she's currently working in planning and implementation, but at the time she was taking the GIS training that Heather was talking about, and she used senior programs data to show a variety of ways that we could use GIS mapping to visualize how our seniors participate in our programs. So senior program staff saw how GIS mapping could be used to view all the participants receiving home-based services or attending our senior centers, coming to congregate meals. So they decided on a few critical projects for GIS mapping, including the medically tailored meals program. GIS staff created a route map for us based on location points provided by senior programs for the medically tailored meals program. And senior program staff are well able to plan these routes, I want to mention that, but the work has always had to be done manually. So GIS mapping used customer addresses, current road conditions, and the time limits of food delivery for the drivers, and then created the most efficient routes. The nutrition staff can go back and tweak these routes as needed, as they have been doing as routes change, but this type of mapping can be replicated for all of our Meals on Wheels routes, which ultimately will save us time and increase our efficiency and effectiveness in serving our senior clients. one of our senior participants, who sadly has stage 4 chronic kidney disease and relies on these meals, these medically tailored meals, told us that she is very pleased to be receiving the medically tailored meals. And she said delivery is on time, very friendly and caring. The drivers take the time to check on me and make me feel really important. Keep doing what you are doing. And we plan to do that, knowing that we can improve our service to our community residents. Working with the GIS team is very exciting for us. And now we're looking at ways that we can expand our use of GIS mapping for other lines of business, our libraries, our museums, even our public art program. We're looking at a variety of ways. Thanks so much.
And next up, we have Celicia from Economic Development.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, City Management. Celicia Viegas with Economic Development, and I am in the Land Management section, which includes a grand total of 3, including our administrator, so 2 staffers. I'm here to kind of show you what we've been working on. It's one of the functions of land management is to be able to track parcels that are owned by the city. So it sounds easy, but it's not. In the past, prior to this map, we've had to rely on just updating lists, files. You can visit our plat file system. It takes a lot of space and a lot of time. So although we've had ArcGIS, we haven't had a specific map that visually shows just city-owned properties. So this is what we've been working on. It is an internal tool. It's really to help answer your questions. We get asked a lot of questions from city management, from other departments regarding our city property. A few years ago, we tried to transition to SharePoint, and we have so much data that it's pretty much bogged down SharePoint. It's hard to search. It's hard to pull up. So we're looking at other alternatives, and this is one of them. So I wanted to kind of demonstrate a little bit for you what we are doing. Alan spoke earlier about their nice base map that they've been working on, and I want to move to that because the pink you see, it doesn't look like a whole lot. This is the city properties. And if you move over to the nice base map that GIS has been working on, you can see a whole lot more. All those little dots are parcels, city-owned property. Mostly drainage, parks, facilities, things of that nature. If you actually go into the table, you can see there's close to 700 individual parcels owned by the city. And we rely on a lot of different data, specifically the Doña Ana County records. They are the official recorder for that. So with this map, we're able to bring in their data and our data together to further analyze this. And so I've filtered, and I don't know if you saw, but it highlighted or outlined in yellow. So all the yellow is what the county shows as city-owned property. Now you would think that they should be the same, right? But we do find discrepancies. I just for, and there's a lag in data. So just kind of going into this parcel of the industrial park, you can see that this parcels outlined in yellow, which shows that the county shows it as city-owned, but it's not in pink, so the city layer doesn't show it as owned. This is just one example. It's because the city just sold this parcel to Love's Travel Stop. So the county hasn't caught up to that yet. So we're constantly being able to track. That's not the only discrepancies we find, but it's a very nice tool to visualize and find those discrepancies. Another thing that we like about our city layer is that we can edit it. So the county layer, it's not our data, we can't manipulate it, and if we want to see a subdivision before it happens, we can manipulate our data and change it if we need to, just for our purposes. Another request that we get a lot of times are from other departments, such as Public Works or Parks, that they're working on a project and they need some land. So say they need a 15 to 20 acres for a park. So we're able to filter out some of this data to be able to say, okay, in the city limits, find me 15 to 20 acre vacant parcels. So we're able to see very easily the blue parcels show up as these are all the 15 to 20 acre vacant parcels within the city. So it's a nice tool that we can utilize. The other thing, the last but not least, we are working on that issue or challenge on data management because we have so much of it. As you can imagine, some of the city parcels, I mean, we're looking at records in the early 1900s sometimes. So it's a lot of data. Let me turn on. There we go. So we have identified and connected some of our documents to this, and it is a work in progress, but I just kind of want to give you an idea of what we're working on. I'm going to take you back to the aerial so you can kind of get a better visual of the city there. So if we scroll in to one of these parcels, I'm going to choose this one. And you click on that point there. A pop-up shows up and we can scroll and it gives various information on each layer. But if I scroll to the city property data, kind of gives, the account number, some reference documents. It shows this is the WIA building. And right here is a LF hyperlink, which is the Laserfish hyperlink. We've been able to directly connect to our Laserfish repository, and it takes us straight to our document library of city-owned property WIA building. We can, in this document, in this library, we're able to have deeds, how we acquired it, why we acquired it, different history, pictures. You can click on one. Oh, it didn't show. Darn it. Well, there was a nice picture there, but sorry. It's not working. Anyhow, it's a work in progress, and we're excited to work on it further, and that's pretty much all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Celicia. And next we have Chief Story, who is going to show us a little bit about his map.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, Jeremy Story, Interim Police Chief. I could talk for a long time about how ArcGIS has helped us, so I'll try to direct it to this specific map, but there's a number of other types of maps that they've helped us with. This was a map that we developed, Carl Hirsch with our Intel section along with the GIS staff worked together to develop, And essentially what this is a way for our patrol officers and our other uniformed officers to quickly visualize where the hotspots are for crime, so they can direct their discretionary time, the time they're not on calls or lunch or doing other things, to spend time in the areas where we have the most crime. So as I talk through it, I'll kind of work with the map. At the bottom is a time slider. So if I'm working day shift, I can look specifically at the time or the crimes that are occurring during day shift as opposed to the whole 24-hour period or any other shift. I can slide this for the whole 24-hour period. This is 60 days of data. So every week we update for the last 60 days. So it's not real time, but we're working towards real time. So it's updated weekly. That looks scary when you look at it like that. When you zoom in, it separates a little bit. So when I look at this data, if I'm assigned to a district, I can see within my district, my police district, where are the areas that are hotspots. So they stand out very easily. You don't have to really describe that much. If I click on any of them, it's going to bring up the incidents that trigger that hotspot that were grouped together. So in this case, it's hard for me to see right here. Let me pull this over. There are 8 incidents. It'll tell me the date, time, the actual address, the case number, and then what it was that triggered it. So we don't pull every incident in here. We try to pull certain ones, more of our serious felonies or property crimes, some violent crime, burglaries, vandalisms, things that are tied together with the general or the overall crime theme in that area. In this case, looking in the 400 block of Telshore, we have several burglary alarms. But the good thing about that is the officer can see by going through this that a burglary alarm problem isn't necessarily a crime problem. So then they can go and potentially screen that out, which I'll show in a second. As I zoom out, it's obviously going to group more together geographically. This area is a 900 block of Walnut or around that area. These incidents were triggered. I have several alarms, but I also have assaults, I have some vandalisms, and several things. So I can look at that and say that looks like it's potentially a problem. I can also look at date. If I have 5 auto burglaries all on the same day or within a 24-hour period, usually that's kind of a flash hotspot where that street got hit, but that's not necessarily a hotspot that I need to continue working because it was one night. And if we respond to it, we're likely, it's too late. We're past that. But if I see that there's a burglary and then 3 days later there's another one and then 2 weeks later there's another one, it tells me it's more of a persistent hotspot over time. The last thing I'll show is they can manipulate the data to kind of look at, to see what we're looking for. There's going to be places on here that probably need to be screened out. The police station is going to show up as a hotspot because a lot of people go to report, and if that address is used for the report, it's going to look like a hotspot. Same thing with both Walmarts and areas like that. So I could screen those areas out so it doesn't influence the data in a way I don't want it to. If I add expressions, I can look for a specific incident, I can exclude an incident, or I can look for just specific crimes. So if I just want incident types and I want to only include certain incident types, I can go from my list and I can say I only want to look at burglaries. And let's say motor vehicle thefts. And then I save that and it's going to change my data a little bit. That's what I want to specifically target, and then I could find where the areas are that are having issues for those crimes. So there's a lot that officers can do with this. They're being encouraged to use it. Even if they spent 30 seconds just pulling it up and they didn't manipulate the data at all, it'd still be a useful tool for them, or is a useful tool for them. And I think this is done probably more in the last year to help us with our overall crime reduction, evidence-based crime reduction approach than probably anything else. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And now we have Chief Smith to talk about the NAT program and how we are working as a team to use this tool.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor, members of City Council, Fire Chief Jason Smith. Before I start talking about the NAT team and the work there, I just want to say that Las Cruces Fire Department, I feel like we've welcomed GIS with open arms because we see that the benefit to our decision making it brings to us. We can make better decisions without having to just rely on our instinct or looking at a regular spreadsheet. Some of the ways that it's helped is definitely with planning our response areas in our stations. When we added Station 7 as well as Station 8, we had to re-look and examine what units we send to your emergency. So that really helped us to plan that out. so that we're sending the closest station, the closest units to those emergencies. We've also used it in the past for talking about our GeoBond and Fire Station 9. If you recall, over a year ago, we brought the timeline of the growth within the city, and GIS overlaid that with our response times, which clearly showed the need on North Sonoma Ranch. That definitely, hands down, we needed that station built there for our response area. And now we're looking at how do we expand it and put this tool and this information, this ability to gather data into the hands of our personnel. So our inspectors are all getting trained in how to use different tools and an app that GIS built for them to help with our nuisance abatement. So we're out in the field actively capturing a lot of this information on properties within the city. So between codes, community development, and our fire department staff, we've identified multiple locations within the city of places where there's some type of nuisance that we need to address, whether it's weeds, graffiti, abandoned homes, structure fires. We can put this information in using our smartphones, and that information is available for us to share and to take action on. So I don't want to zoom into any one particular property, but you can see the list, not even the list, the map here with the different plots of the buildings where there is some type of issue. Where this goes into now the next level looking forward is we can take this information and this GIS data and these maps, and we can share them with our CAD, with our computer aided dispatch at our dispatch center in MRVDA, as well as our pre-planning software that we have. And that information is now available to our responders in their hands while they're responding in an engine or truck to this emergency. So they can see that a property's been abandoned, that it hasn't been addressed, and they know what other difficulties they might face in the field. So this is turning the data and the work that the NAT team is doing into actually actionable information for our crews. So it's definitely helping our decision-making process, and we're very happy for our collaboration with GIS.
Thank you, Chief. I'm not quite that tall, so I'll have to adjust this. So that kind of brings us just to unpack what was presented there. We showed a little bit about data analysis and how we want to transform resources and make decisions, multiple ways of sharing data and managing and integrating different systems of data, and even documentation like the Laserfish. We also see how we can utilize patterns and data to respond and act. We also have a team approach to how we're sharing and managing data across departments. The NAT workflow solution that Chief Smith talked a little bit about is something that several different departments are working with and managing the data. So when we treat data as a strategic asset, we can do so much more. So we have the ability to create utilities and other solutions in GIS to act on data more, and really we see this as a culture in the organization that we act upon and provide the strategies and technologies for analyzing this information. So I just want to share this real quick, this graphic here, because I believe that there's a lot more we can do. I think primarily we're probably mostly in this performance reporting. We can tell you what happened in the past. We're not always doing so much prediction and looking at the future. And that's really where I think the organization needs to go. So I have a couple more examples to show you of just how we can do some of that, and then we'll wrap it up and allow you to ask us questions. Just a couple more examples of how we can integrate data from other systems. Here, I'm going to show you infill areas. We're pulling the overlay from the infill area and pulling our Excella data in, the permitting and business registration software, where we extract this on a regular basis and we bring it into GIS so it can be visualized here. And so again, this is very interactive. This is called Insights. And you can change the year you want to look at. It'll reflect the changes on the map. You want to look at an individual point or multiple points, you can do that, and then look at the information that's presented. I have a couple more similar examples just to give you a little bit of a teaser here of what we can do. This is actually monthly not just monthly, it's a number of years worth of data for residential and commercial development activities coming out of community development. These are only new alterations and additions. But as you can see, they're all showing up on the map here. If you want to click on one, it changes the information. It's very interactive. I only want to see a certain year and the data for residential or commercial. It changes based on the selections that are made. We also can see the project valuations. So this is a lot of data that we're publishing every month. We create monthly reports, and they're distributed to staff and various other parties of interest. We also can show you from this same thing the number of certificate of occupancies by year, the counts, and permits issued. So there's a lot of information here that gets shared. And again, this is just focusing on residential, commercial, and only new alterations and additions. Very interactive. So data will change as you make different selections. Here's another example of what's going on at the Innovation Park, the Innovation Industrial Park. And you can change by year, and it'll show the permits that were issued for that particular time. Again, clicking on each individual item will kind of isolate it on the map. And the last one I'll show you is related to the NAT. This is the dashboard we currently are able to show with kind of what's going on with this program. And so it's very interactive. Again, we have a lot of information by council. You can select by council district. It'll isolate those numbers by that. We also have different levels of severity, the total number of cases, what's an emergency, different ways of classifying data and how we would look at the data to take additional action if need be. And so that's kind of it for the demonstrations. Just a lot of ways to share data, a lot of ways to present data. And so if you have ideas, that's certainly something, the sky's the limit. So again, I go back to the questions like, what can't you see and what do you want to see? Because we have the tools to do that. And so with that, I'd like to conclude our presentation and open it up to discussion if anybody would like to ask questions or have comments. We have staff who can address anything you'd like to talk about. Thank you so much for your time. I know we went a little long, but I think it was very exciting stuff to share.
So I'm going to go with Councilor Beitek, Bencomo, and Gondra.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you everyone so much for this presentation. I think it's very exciting to see all the data and how, I know when I make decisions up here, I like to see data, I like to see what is going on, and being able to take things down to different types of levels, especially district level, is super important when we're making prioritizations. Just briefly, as we were looking at that, I picked up on road numbers for District 2. I have the worst quality of roads in the district by quite a bit, as it turns out. But it also looks like, okay, so now that I know that, how do I work on it? So I think this is very, very helpful. As we're putting these pieces together, do you see an area right now that needs to be added as far as data, like the next step? Because you said it's very important for us to look at the questions of what's missing.
I'm sorry.
For any of it, so this project is really, like there's so many different levels and pieces. Is there another area that you are wanting to add a layer on now, or a different department that you're thinking about, or is, kind of like, what's next?
Thank you for the question, Counselor. I think of course, data is important, but I think it's more important that we're training up our staff to be able to use GIS or other ways of looking at data, because we have limited staff in GIS, and while we're more than happy to help, and we want to do that, we really want to share that expertise with others in order to help build that. So whether it's a tool in GIS or even there's other business intelligence tools that the city is able to utilize. I know that we use Office, there's Power BI in Office, there's Tableau, there's other business intelligent tools that we can utilize to look at data holistically. But I think most importantly, it's the educational piece. And we've done most of the training in the past, but we just don't have the capacity to continue to do that all the time.
That's great, thank you. And I really do like the way that it makes us look at efficiency too. I think that was very important to note. Since we have put a lot of pieces of data on there, is there anything that we needed to consider with, I guess, the IT and security of all this type of mapping?
I think with any data that is going to be published, we need to have a policy for doing that publicly. We don't want to, obviously, we want a review committee to publish anything that needs to go out to the public and not just do that because of anything that would be sensitive data. But that's something we've been talking about in our group, specifically about having a process to kind of control the release of the information. And it is also controlled by some of the roles and responsibility within the system. But I think formally, we should work together across the departments with our information technology team as well to make sure we're adhering to policies that make sense for the organization.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Mayor, those are all my questions, and just really thank you to everybody that's participated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bencomo?
Thank you so much, and thank you so much. I don't know if you could hear us all sort of snickering about how excited we all were about this presentation, and even just, you said, you know what, PowerPoint, I don't think so. We're gonna really show you all the full sort of breadth of our skill here, so that was really, really great. I also, as you were sort of showing us all the different maps, I was thinking about, I'm a believer in that the safest communities are not necessarily the communities with the most enforcement, but the communities with the most resources. And I was sitting here nudging Councilor Corrin every time there was a new map, and I was like, oh yeah, I think that's actually kind of accurate. The safest communities are the ones with the most resources. And I think if you just see and street condition and hotspots and just all of these different things, and I feel like that's telling us a much wider story of the entire city, right? Not even just departments. And so I think maybe the next challenge for you all is how do we even continue to break down silos amongst the city departments and tell this bigger story about Las Cruces? And I feel like you're sort of going in that direction already. I actually had made myself a little note to just give you huge props on the NAT because they presented last week at our housing PRC, and I was just really taken aback by the level of detail that it has. And I know they didn't click on any particular houses on there, but like it just shows you all of these different details about that house. There's 3 layers of it. Is it just, did we just hear about this house, or is this house on like level 3 and it's really ready to be knocked down? It's I know the NAT has existed for a really long time, but it's really being taken. I think you're giving it sort of some new life to it and through GIS. And so I really just want to thank you because that presentation was really incredible. And this is something that I really care about, is addressing abandoned nuisance properties in all across the city, not just in District 4. I wanted to ask you about if you were thinking, if you had talked to economic development, especially about including the MRAs, the 2 new MRAs that we just established, the metropolitan redevelopment areas. And I know that we haven't fully began to implement those, and so I don't know what it'll look like, but I think that's also a huge opportunity for Data Point.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Yes, absolutely. We'll work with the department if need be, or make sure we get the data into GIS as it is approved and unfolds. So
yeah, I think
absolutely.
That'd be a really great economic development tool. And you showed us a little bit about the infill, but I also feel like as we're talking to, for example, housing developers and where they can build more affordable housing or multifamily housing, I feel like these are just such great tools that you have created for us. So I really just say all of that to say thank you and how excited it is that we have this kind of robust department. So thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much, Courtney and staff. This is really, I was sitting here excited, just bubbly. Really appreciate it. I do have some questions from our presentation last week at the Housing Policy Review Committee on the NAT and your presentation about, Councilor Bencomo, you spoke of like sort of how are we letting the public know, right? What are we going to publish? And I think it important to publish because we always hear, well, Coast doesn't do anything. We make a call or to police and they don't do anything. And I think this is really important. And often when I have district meetings and people like IPRA, you know, and they're like, did you know there was 154 calls? And I'm like, oh my gosh, right? When you really put it in those kinds of, you know, terms, it feels like Codes is doing a lot, and sort of I think the public needs to be aware, particularly on these nuisance properties, that people are understanding. Like before I got here, there was a call on a nuisance property that they were not aware that it had been red tagged and the permit to be demolished, right, the abandoned building. And once you say that to them, they're like, oh, okay, I understand. There's actual, you know, there's an actual plan in place. But I think about the number of calls that everybody's getting on this. I've received 5 calls in the last 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, about this particular area. So, Ifo, I know there's sort of that feeling about, okay, how are we going to present this data? And I'm really advocating to publish this data in a way that's going to be useful to the public, and particularly in the NAT area. And I know there's some conversations happening, but I think we need to make sure we do that. And then, Courtney, I'm thinking like the lift up and the layers, right? That particular one that you did on the lift. I'm thinking you did. The tree streets, the staff did, yes. And I'm wondering, and I'm thinking, so we used that distressed indexing tool that identified a number of factors related to the area, like area median income, unemployment, employment establishments, those things. And I'm wondering if that's something that could be done as a part of the lift up and then scaling out.
Can I have
Sure,
Trent
of
answer
course.
for you?
Mayor, councilors, I'm Trent Bianchi. So for Lift Up, we did actually do that.
Okay.
Any polygon or any I guess shape I can draw on a map, we can use infographics. And infographics within ArcGIS will pull in all the data, whether it be the tracks or the block data. We can pull in employment data, even access to internet. So we can do that, and we actually we provided that to Lift Up for the areas that we're kind of considering, so they could make their decisions a little better, more data driven.
Perfect. So how long did that take you?
With all the other projects, maybe a couple weeks to pull it all together.
And it's just the 3 of you all with some students, or how many staff?
We have quite a few. If everyone would like to stand up, that's
okay.
within the GIS department, or Works GIS. There you go.
Okay. You
So we
guys
have
are
quite a few.
phenomenal. You do, like 10 staff? About? Do you need more resources? What sort of things would you? Yeah, talk to me about that. What is the need there? I think particularly as we move forward in more departments, I think you said educating the staff, most important, but what sort of, if you had the pie in the sky, what would you ask for?
I think we're really wanting to obviously have a trainer to help train. We need some more analysts to support the organization as a whole. We have 4 analysts, right? throughout the department. No, we have 3. Heather? Oh, I'm sorry, for utilities has 1. We have 2 in community development. Heather represents Public Works, but we also have staff in Parks and Rec. And so I don't, I'm thinking as we focus a bit more on the analytics, we would need to have more analysts to support the different departments. So I don't really have a number for that.
Sure, but just giving
Yeah.
an idea that, or going back and assessing and then bringing it back to
Yeah,
council.
we need to do that because it's not just GIS. I
Yeah.
think we need to approach how our data plan as well. Because it's beyond just people who can do the geographic analysis as well. So.
Absolutely. And so with that, tell me, what does that mean? It's beyond what you can, what does that include?
Well, we have our trained staff in GIS. We don't really have data scientists in this organization. And so I think if you want to do that, we need to have a conversation
for
around
8
that.
years. Yes. So data scientists.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have crime analysts in the police department, but what about other analysts that specialize in their different departments? And so that's the culture we want to build.
Yeah.
The communities of practice that we would want to build is a focus in the data sciences to do more with data, to support your questions, your needs, and really make better decisions around data.
Could we have a data scientist for council? EFO, that's what I'm advocating for, a data scientist for council, I think is an important thing. Okay, this is thank you. I'm wondering if you could go back and then through EFO share what your assessment is in terms of resource and tools to really make it as robust, kind of that vision that you have to forecast. Kind of next steps would be helpful to me.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Graham?
Thank you, Mayor. No questions, just compliments. If you're looking at your overarching goal 3 bullet point, or our overarching goal bullet point 3 of getting buy-in from council, I'm sold. Like this was rad. So, and I just wanted to thank you for, I know a lot of work went into not just what you do, but in presenting it so concisely and so compellingly. And to echo Mayor Pro Tem's excellent points because, about getting you more resources, because now you've showed how cool you are and the floodgates are going to open of requests. But I'm joking, but I'm not, because once you show what you can do, I'm sure I have 5 ideas off the top of my head. So just to make sure that you're not inundated, I'd like to echo that commitment to getting you the resources you need. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions? So you may have covered this, but do you want to practice on one that would really be helpful so I don't have to look it up? Because I know a long time ago, the city, you had a way to find out what a particular piece of property is zoned. Do you know how to do that?
We actually do have a zoning map. Alan, would you like to show?
Yeah, well, if you could do 2795 Roadrunner Parkway, I could see what it's zoned, and that helped me with my,
Would you like to show?
my little project here.
This thing. Well, you figure out how to get into, you're in.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilor. This is Alan Wright. I'm with Community Development. I built this map quite a while ago. It's actually available for the public so that a lot of the public can actually answer some of their questions before contacting some of the zoning staff. That way they can at least see what it's zoned as and then hopefully formulate some questions that don't waste staff's precious time. So I'm going to go back to now. Again, this is the GIS technology, which is a ArcGIS Online website, which everything up here is shared to the public. There is the Las Cruces zoning map. Okay. And we'll expand this so you can see. And there's the city of Las Cruces. And what was the address that you were looking for?
2795 Roadrunner Parkway.
So all I have to do here
No,
is,
this is something that, there was neighbors that were coming up a couple meetings ago.
so all I have to do is type in part of the address, and then I've got an option to be able to pick the address that you're interested in. It will highlight that location, and it will tell you what it is. I can also save it as an image, or I can actually look at it. So I'm going to zoom in to that particular location. And then the application shows that it is actually an R1A zone. It actually goes through and tells you some other information about it, like when it was last updated. Oh, this is addresses. So I'm going to go over to here, and I'll pick the zoning information. And now you can see that it is a single-family medium density dwelling. It tells you the council bill upon which when it was created, the ordinance number of when the zone took place, and about the acreage of that particular zone change. Okay?
157 acres?
Of the zone. So for example, if I click out, if I click in here again, it is of the entire area of what was zoned
Oh, okay, gotcha.
on that zoning ordinance. So this whole area of the high range was zoned at that time.
Okay, great. Thank
And
you.
it also tells you when it was zoned, which was 1979.
I appreciate it very much.
I have a question, Mayor. Thank you.
Not about this.
Yes.
No, we can't, this was just a demonstration. It's not on the agenda. We can't really discuss this.
I
was just,
have a question. I'm not going to
Okay,
discuss
all right, all
anything. I'm going to open a can of worms.
possibly.
That's all
So-
we get anyway around here, everything.
With this zone map, though, you can also search by the ordinance number, you can search by the case number, you can search by the zone classification, and also find by council bill. So if a lot of this information is readily available to the entire public.
So does that mean that that particular parcel of land isn't definitely single medium density, right? It could be zone something else, Mr. Nichols?
It
Counselor,
is approved as zone for residential, and it's based on the zoning classifications that the city has adopted.
Well, Mr. Mayor, why would it be incorrect for me to ask a question?
Because I wanted a demonstration, and then when you're asking questions about something that we're not really supposed to, this was just meant to, I just want to know what the zoning was, that was it.
Well, I think that the zoning is incorrect, and so my point is to see whether the areas are identified properly. I mean, say, for example, someone wants to come in and put up a business. So then they zero in on say in the innovative industrial complex. And then lo and behold, they think, oh, this is wonderful, I can set up yada yada. And then they find out that they can't. So that's why it's germane to this particular presentation. So you'd have to look at the zoning thing that the ordinance or whatever, to this particular lot.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. Larry Nichols, Community Development, for the record. What we're demonstrating today and what is shown is that this would be the zoning that is established by ordinance and is the most current zoning classification that we are aware of. If there was a rezoning requested, then that would show up differently, but for a one single parcel, that would be called spot zoning, and we don't support a spot zoning request.
Okay, so this is definitely the single-family, medium density, and it would be conforming with the other developments in that area?
Yes.
Great, okay,
Mayor,
thank
Council
you.
Flores, that is correct.
Okay, so the information is up to date. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I think that kind of concludes some of the questions from our presentation, from your presentation.
Yes.
And it's been very impressive, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so the last item, 4.3, the GeoBond quarterly update. Mr. David Cedillo, the Director of Public Works, is going to do the presentation.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. David Cedillo, Public Works Director for the record. Myself and Natalie Green will be presenting to you today the updates for the 2018-2022 GO bonds. As part of the 2018 GO bonds, the Animal Services Center, the Get Acquainted area began work this past week and is estimated to be completed towards the end of October. The puppy kennels that are still needed at the center have been shipped on September 12th. The installation, if not happening today, will begin this week at the facility. And lastly, the cat condos will be delivered in a few weeks, here in about mid-October. Now, Mayor, Council, but most importantly to the public, it's my pleasure to notify you that the city, specifically Adrian Guzman in our communications office, has been nominated for an Emmy for his efforts in the Goals Accomplished video series for the 2018 GO bonds.
Yay!
Now, I did ask previously if I could call him out so we can all give him a round of applause, but he is actually in the control room, so he can't step out to support this meeting. So if you could please join me in giving him a big round of applause for the nomination.
Yay!
Now, again, the award is going to be presented at the 46th Annual Rocky Mountain Emmys, and that, again, is for the 2023 nominations. Now, moving on to our 2022 project updates, we had 4 questions that were approved by the public. You're all very well of those, but I'll touch a little bit on each. That's the new fire station, number 9, the continuation of the East Mesa Public Recreation Complex, affordable housing, and also park improvements. So as part of station number 9, we did approve the architectural and engineering contract for the amount of $723,500, which was reported as the estimated at the last update. Since then, the programming and the schematic design have been completed, and we just recently received the estimates for those schematic designs, and I'll go over those with you here shortly. The construction, which includes the base bid for the facility, along with bid lot number 1, which are additional bunk spaces, came in at $12.2 million. We also have bid lots 2 and 3. Bid lot 2 is for carport with solar to supply to the facility. That estimate at this time is $430,000. And the rooftop solar under bid lot 3 is estimated at $440,000. Next steps, we will move into the design development of the project, and we are estimating that those bids will go out in April of next year. Here is a rendering from the schematic design of what the fire station could look like. If you notice, it's fairly similar to station number 3. But again, this is just a rendering of what that could look like. As we move on, next project for the East Mesa Public Rec Continuation Project, the remaining scope as part of those funds as we're moving forward Irrigation and landscaping installations are continuing at the site. And we are also in the process of procuring the play equipment and also the shade structures for the complex. The Musco lighting, that is also in the procurement phase, and once those materials are received, we'll work on the installation at the site for those. And lastly, we have awarded the design contract for the continuation work in that amount of $2.75 million. That was awarded to Wilson and Company in the amount of $280,000. Next, we also have the park improvements as part of this. As I'd mentioned at the last quarterly update meeting, the first priority project for Parks and Rec is La Llorona Park. That will include restrooms, amenity upgrades, and trail repairs. We have a contract with the architectural and engineering firm. That is under contract execution, and at this point it's under their review for approval. Once we get that back, we will continue on to the next phase, which is the design development. Now, priority number 2 is listed there because, as council asked at the last quarterly update, was what happens if there's money left over from the first priority? And again, those priorities were set based on the parks master plan. So if there are any monies left over from the design and construction of priority number 1, those will go towards exercise equipment replacement at Telbrook Park. And with that, at this time, I will turn it over to Natalie Green to go over question number 3 of the GO bonds.
Thanks, David.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Natalie Green for the record. GO bond question number 3 was a question on affordable housing development and our Affordable Housing Land Bank and Trust Fund. In anticipation of the GO bond, the City of Las Cruces contracted with Project Moxie to develop a housing investment strategy. And that investment strategy, in addition to covering the funds of the GO bond, will also cover our overall affordable housing program. And so I'll give a couple of updates of where they are in that process. They have completed phase 1 of that project, so they've completed their environmental scans. They've done a review of all our historical documents. So we have an affordable housing plan, our consolidated plan, various statewide plans all around affordable housing. And they've also done their data collections and identified all the key stakeholders for their phase 2. Their key takeaways from that session was that we were well positioned to create the investment strategy to leverage the GO bonds, and that with a strong pipeline of projects, very strong leadership, and an invested community, that we're ready to address the next steps in our housing crisis. And their data did indicate that all types of housing was needed across the continuum. As they're in progress with phase 2, which includes their community engagement. I know that many of you have met with them. They were here last month for a site visit, so they were able to visit the Community Hope, Brewers, Desert Hope, some of our current projects like Pedrena, Paseos Verdes, Peachtree. They also looked at some of the East Loman site for the future plan East Loman and some items in Metro Verde. They also presented to both the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee and the Housing Policy Review Committee. They met with some of our key partners, and they conducted a couple of focus groups, and they also identified some complementary resources. Their highlights from that part of the phase was that it's important to have a prioritization process for land development because we have a lot of competing needs. And they also felt it was important that we identify an annual unit count and establish some reoccurring and stable funding for both supportive services and affordable housing development after the GO bonds are complete. Bless you. They're also working on the analysis and proposal draft. You will be getting that, seeing that draft as part of a work session, and it'll also obviously come for you for adoption and presentation. Some of the key takeaways from what they're hearing from the stakeholders and various staff members is that
there's a desire to increase our communication tools and our messaging and to build on the current momentum around housing, and I'll get into that in a future slide. They did mention that our location is going to be very critical. We want to ensure that we're using those locational efficiencies to pick affordable housing development sites, and then as we roll out the MRA, using that as a tool for accessing other funding. The qualified allocation plan actually gives 9% tax credits bonuses in the scoring process if they're in an MRA area. One of the things they want to look at or will be helping us look at is how do we increase affordable housing by negotiating set-asides within market rate developments. So private developers, having those incentives in our toolbox to be able to work with the private developers as they're building those developments to add housing to their already existing developments or their new developments. Again, looking at that prioritization tool, and so they are working on updating our underwriting criteria and our developer intake forms, having that framework to review sort of the one-off projects that we need to look at. Reviewing special needs housing for homelessness and having an innovation fund so we can look at some of those more creative housing solutions. And then as we anticipate the historical funding levels at the state, we should be leveraging our projects with their funding sources. In terms of a housing strategy, and this is a repeat, so I won't spend too much time for those who have already seen it. Our strategy will revolve around preserving our existing housing stock, promoting and developing new housing, and then also ensuring that we're promoting housing stability for those special needs populations so they're able to stay housed. And that includes homelessness prevention activities. So one of the things that is going into the plan is that we need to find where both vision and partnership and political will meet in the middle. So we don't want to put anything in the plan that doesn't have a vision or doesn't have a will. So everything in the plan is going to be or needs to be implementable to have a good strategy. In terms of a housing toolbox, so some of the things that they will be writing into our plan, and they'll talk about this more in the coming months, is having both the incentives, the development regulations, the funding, and the partnerships all work together. And there's different ways to have that robust housing toolbox. The Affordable Housing Committee has met 3 times. So their current sort of project is they're reviewing all our existing policies and processes. They're digesting the Affordable Housing Act and our Affordable Housing General Oversight Ordinance. There are some existing state laws that we have to follow anytime we do any affordable housing, regardless of the funding source. So they're working through those documents. They are also acting as the steering committee for the investment strategy, so they'll be providing feedback on that process, looking at the ideas and concepts, working on project messaging, and then making recommendations to you as a council. In terms of our housing pipeline, in the meantime, staff has been working on various projects, so you'll see many of these come forward, or you've already seen them come forward. Just to give you a quick update, Three Sisters is in their final plan review. They are hoping to close on their full financing package in October, and then we'll start construction shortly thereafter. So we're in crunch time for closing on all of our projects, and staff is pretty busy and overwhelmed. 2 of my staff are actually in compliance and underwriting training in Baltimore, so making sure their skill sets are up to par with all these loan closings. Our revolving loan fund is rolling out. We have the first 10 houses underwritten, and so those mortgage instruments and security instruments are being drafted. It's very similar to a bank, so we have to order appraisals. We'll do our own underwriting on top of the agency's underwriting, and then we'll file those instruments, and those are starting construction. I think 3 of them are in permit process now. Peachtree, they're not anticipating, they're in plan review right now, but they will not be closing on their financing till about December. And then Pedrena is closing in November, and you'll see those resolutions come forward next month to process our side of the financing. And then we're also working on a couple other projects in our pipeline. What's upcoming, I'm so glad that GIS presented. They are helping us with our affordable housing story map. So you'll see a launch of both our new affordable housing, and then we're also working with our PIO department to launch that fair housing campaign. You'll see the investment strategy work session and the adoption come forward in the next 2 months. And then you'll also see some 2004 tax credit round pre-commitments. The Paseos Verdes, I think we're going to hold off. We wanted to go for the 2024 competitive application process, but based on the MRAs, I think we're waiting till the 2025. We are coming to you with the Peachtree Phase 2 pre-commitment, only because we need to preserve our difficult to develop bonus. Without getting too complicated, it basically buys us a lot of funding that makes the project viable in that 4% tax credit. And then our grants office is submitting our HUD Pro Housing Grant application in October 2023. And then we have a couple state opportunities that I'm hoping the next time I'm up here I get to tell you about. In terms of the actual bond sale, we anticipate those favorable rates will occur in February 2024. So we'll sell the bond around then. That does allow us to reimburse ourselves for any funding we've already put out, but that also aligns with our qualifying grantee process. So every October we open up our NOFA for both federal funds, city funds, and then our affordable housing programming. And so you'll see all of that come out in October. As part of the bonds, we do want to ensure that we have the readiness to proceed analysis done, and we can use it to cover existing projects. Given the way development works, where you have a pre-commitment, then you package all your financing, and then you actually start construction, we want to fund some of the projects that are more ready in the pipeline than the further out ones. And then we're also working to, again, leverage that federal and state momentum. So the state's pushing out a lot of affordable housing money, and so is the federal government. So we want to leverage off of those. And with that, David and I will stand for discussion.
Thanks, Natalie. Councillor Coran.
I thank you for this presentation. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, David. I noticed that the fire station is 30% over-ish what it was bonded for. It seems like the estimate for how much it's going to be. Is that correct?
Mayor, Councillor Corin, that's what it appears to be at this time. Again, those are schematic estimates at this time. As we work through the final design and based on what is incorporated into the facility, at that point we can either work on that number or look to see what additional funding is lacking to be able to build it to that level of service.
And if I could just also add that those proposals were done in 2018 before COVID. And so since then, on these new changes, price of construction has gone up considerably. So, I mean, I was anticipating it being more expensive as well.
I thought the proposals were from 2021. It was like double what the prior, when we voted on it, it was actually double the prior.
You're right.
One that
I'm
was
thinking
similar.
of another,
Yeah.
I was thinking of the other fire station, but.
I guess I just sort of wanted to say I've seen the value engineering process and how it can be pretty harsh in terms of functionality of spaces. And so I would hope that however that process goes throughout it, that the functions and important things that the fire department has identified really are able to be maintained. So I would ask that like the value engineering process doesn't cut to the bone of the fire station and make sure that all those things are maintained. So I hope that there are other, I'm thinking about, I think we have public safety infrastructure funding separately, but I'm hoping that we can leverage other things and not value engineer it to non-functional or not functional well enough, because then everyone will be cursing us into the future, which I'm sure you have experienced. So thank you. I just wanted to confirm that I was understanding that correctly, and then also hope that we can not value engineer too much. So.
Thank you, Councillor.
Anyone else? Oh, that was easy. Okay, thanks. I do have a quick question. So when you put the fire station there, you know, I've often thought of, I mean, to help save costs. I mean, is there certain fire stations that we've already built that we would have all the plans to that would work? Or is that something there that, do they always all have to be, I mean, a little bit different? Because if you think about it, you know, we already have the plans for it and everything, and it's working, and we know what it looks like. Why not build it? I'm just curious.
Mayor, yes, that is exactly what happened in this process. We did go back and utilize the services of the architect that were involved with Fire Station number 3, and that did help reduce some of those costs.
Good, thanks. Still no questions? All right. All right, thanks, David.
Thank you.
Is that conclude the presentation?
Yes, sir, that does.
All right, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn then.
Move to adjourn?
So moved by Flores.
Motion made by Councilor Beta, second by Councilor Flores, that we adjourn. Teresa?
This is on a motion to adjourn the meeting. Councilor Beta?
Yes.
Councilor Graham?
Yes.
Councilor Bencomo?
Yes.
Councilor Coran?
Yes.
Councilor Flores?
Yes.
Councilor Gondeta?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, it's 4:07 PM. We are adjourned. Thank you. Okay, this is the agenda setting meeting for our October 2nd, 2023 City Council meeting. Number 1, non-consent.
Number 1, non-consent.
2, non-consent.
2, non-consent.
3, consent.
3, consent.